about my subjective feelings. I'm not talking about my likes or preferences or tastes. That's not what I'm talking about. I didn't talk about that one time. It's an objective fact that there are abstracts and concrete entities. It's not that hard. Read the Wikipedia.
Is time an abstract convention? Yes or no?
Read any philosophical dictionary.
Was time an abstract convention? Yes or no?
Read any philosophy dictionary. Until you get this right, stop talking about ontology.
Is time an abstract convention? Yes or no?
Time is an abstract. It's not a convention.
Time's not a convention, is it?
No. Time is the thing being quantified by the convention. Get your category straight. Really? Yes, really. A second is not time itself. It's a quantity of time. Is it not?
Oh boy, Gregory, you're so all over the place.
It's not a quantity of time?
You're saying time is an abstract, it's not a convention.
Right.
Time is real.
Yes, it's a real abstract entity. It's not concrete.
We're not talking about abstract, Gregory. As I already told you
2 seconds ago.
I already told you, Gregory, that abstract things are subjective. We're talking about agreeable conventions. Agreeable conventions, i.e., the convention of time.
Not subjective. They're not subjective. That's your problem.
Time's a convention, bud.
No. Time is not a convention. Abstracts are not subjective. That's a false absolute statement. You have it wrong. You have your categories wrong. I don't know where you get these ideas from.
We can agree on things abstractly and have a convention, but abstract is subjective, Gregory, on its own.
No, they're not.
Without a way of agreeing.
They're not. Why do you keep saying that?
Yes. Because your weight of a unicorn and my weight of a unicorn could be two different weights because it only exists abstractly. Therefore, no one can quantify it.
That is an asinine
because it doesn't exist empirically. It's subjective. Is there an agreed upon convention of how to measure unicorns?
An asinine example.
Yeah. You're out of your mind, Gregory.
So when I say English is real and you say English is not real, is this a subjective matter?
English is an agreed upon thing that we use, Gregory. Okay.
Is English real objectively or not?
Just like a convention, Gregory. It's a thing that's agreed upon that we
measure.
Is
English real objectively or not?
English is a convention. It's an abstract convention. Doesn't exist on its own. It's something that we use to define and agree on.
I'm not asking you about whether English is abstract or concrete. Is it objectively real?
It's objective in the sense that we agree on it. Yes.
So English is real whether you believe it or not.
English is being had by two people communicating. Whether you understand what they're saying, then it's real.
So language and English included are real, whether you believe it or not.
They're real conventions that we use. If they're abstract conventions that we agree upon, making it an agreement. Communication requires an agreement.
That are real, whether you believe it or not. So they don't. The reality of English, the reality of language, the reality of abstracts are real, and they're not contingent upon you believing them.
Yes, it's an agreed upon system, bud. It doesn't exist on its own.
It's not contingent upon believing them.
English does not exist in nature, bud. It's a man-made convention that we use to communicate.
It's not contingent upon you believing them. The reality of English does not depend on people believing that English is real.
It requires being educated. People aren't born knowing English, bud. You're taught it.
It does not depend on people.
Can you go somewhere in nature and pick up English on its own and learn English in nature? No,
English,
you can't.
The reality of language, including English, is not contingent upon people believing that it is real. English is real.
As I just told you, English is real because people make it real. It's a convention we use to communicate. But in nature, English is non-existent, just like numbers don't exist in nature. It's a convention we use to quantify, to agree, to discuss things.
Why are you dedicated to this categorical error concerning ontology? Why? Why won't
Show
you
me
acknowledge
numbers.
that
Show
abstracts
me
are
numbers
real?
or language in nature.
Why won't you let go of this stupid ass categorical error? Have you read the Wikipedia article? Have you read the articles concerning ontology, concreteness, and abstractness in any philosophy dictionary? Have you? Doesn't make any sense. When you deny the reality and objectivity of abstracta, you reduce your very sentence to absurdity. If
Sounds like you're the one who's
abstracta are
absurd.
only subjective, if abstracta are not real, then you cannot be thinking right now, let alone
Language,
believing, let alone
language, and
stop
numbers
interrupting
don't
me.
exist in nature.
Stop
They
interrupting
take
me.
an agree. They take
Stop
two people
interrupting me.
agreeing to base the convention.
Stop interrupting me. Just because abstracts are not concrete doesn't mean they're not real. That's a fallacy.
You're straw manning, Gregory.
Just because you can't grab a handful of number 2 doesn't mean number 2 isn't real. Just because you can't grab a handful of 3-ness doesn't mean 3-ness is not real.
You're straw manning, Gregory.
No, I'm not. You're moving the goalpost.
Did you have something to say, Matrix?
Refuted you. I've just simply refuted you. You think you keep saying that you don't find numbers in nature, which is implying that because you can't have a concrete experience with numbers means numbers aren't real. Just because you can't hold the number 2 or 2-ness in your hand doesn't mean 2-ness is not real.
Concepts, Gregory. There's a difference between something being empirically real and conceptually real.
You don't know what you're talking about.
You
don't know what you're talking about. You're dedicated to your error.
Of physicality, Gregory. Sorry.
You don't know what you're talking about. You're dedicated to your error.
Again, time is just an expression. That's all.
No, it's not.
It's a calculable way to measure the progressional sequence of series of events. That's it, Gregory. Sorry to break the news. And leprechauns and unicorns aren't real, Gregory. Sorry, bud.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Santa Claus is not
all
real,
your
Gregory.
categories, your ontological categories are confused. You don't know what you're talking about. You haven't read one philosophy dictionary to inform you as to what is the nature of concreta and abstracta. You haven't read one article to inform you about ontology. You don't know what you're talking about. If you were to step in front of any philosopher, especially one that specializes in metaphysics, saying this nonsense, then they would laugh in your face. Read any philosophy dictionary on ontology, particularly abstracta and concreta, and you will be utterly embarrassed if you have any humbleness
you need to
and desire
understand
to seek the truth about the matter.
Gregory. You need to understand the fundamental philosophy of nature, not just your own abstract concept of feelings and beliefs.
Understanding is abstract. You just contradicted yourself.
No, sorry, bud. Truth is real, buddy. Truth is not abstract. Truth does
What's the
exist,
concrete properties of truth?
It's never changing. It's truth to
abstracts can never change.
In my human moral understanding, truth is non-changing. It's literally an accurate way to explain
none of those
the
things
reality
are
around
concrete
you.
properties. You don't know what you're talking about.
Truth, wisdom. These things are synonymous with one another.
You don't know what you're talking about. Immutability.
Explanation, truth, and wisdom are all the same thing, Gregory.
You don't know what you're talking about. Immutability.
Explanation,
every time
and wisdom are all the same thing, Gregory.
Every time you have to talk to me because you don't know what you're talking about.
You talk over me.
You don't know what you're talking about.
That's what you do. You talk over everybody, bro. You patronize everyone. This is what you do to everybody. You patronize everyone, Gregory.
I'm going to say
you don't know what you're talking about. That's all you want to ever say to people.
All right. It seems like
you're
guys
the most
both,
patronizing person.
Hold on, man. You guys are both talking over each other, so if you try to maybe reset and one person can speak.
Yeah. Quit patronizing, Gregory. Quit telling me I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Immutability is not concrete. That thing in immutability isn't concrete. So
Can you show us a unicorn in nature?
Every property that you described of truth, saying that truth is not abstract but real, which is insinuating that it's concrete, you didn't give me any instance of a concrete property. You failed.
Truth, wisdom, and explanation are all three in the same thing, bud.
I told you, give me a concrete property of truth. You gave me everything except a concrete property of truth. You have failed.
I did. I told you it's never changing.
That's not concrete.
Yeah. Time changes. Everything changes. Truth doesn't change, bud.
Not concrete. Yep. You
Truth
failed.
is eternal.
It's ridiculous. Why are you dedicated to your error?
Tell us what truth is, Gregory.
Truth is, first of all, an abstracta. It's not concrete. You can't hold 5 pounds of truth in your hand. You can't blow on truth. You can't shoot a radio wave and contact truth. That's not what truth is. Truth isn't like that. It's an abstract entity.
Truth?
The word truth, the very concept of truth, the very the ontological nature of the word truth and the concept truth and all true things are abstract. Now, this abstracta, the very being, the reality of these abstracta is grounded in the being of Yahusha, Yahuwah, the triune God. All abstracta are grounded in his mind. All knowledge is grounded in his mind.
Wow. Very preachy.
Yeah, you can hate God all you want to. That doesn't make him not real.
I didn't say I don't hate nothing, man. Relax.
You just tried to ridicule what I just said as preachy. You don't play dumb like you didn't say that with ridicule. If you're going to ridicule somebody, be a man and own up to it.
Hey, bro. You got a lot to say. You got it.
Great. So are you going to make an argument, or are you just going to keep giving me this cowardice ridicule? Are you going to double speak?
You know my argument,
me
we already
and then
spoke about this
backpedal
earlier. You already know what I said before. You remember? Or do you know? I don't know. That's why I'm confused how we're still on this topic.
Yeah, I don't play these little girl games where I try to ridicule someone and try to attack someone's position and then pretend that I didn't just do that. I'm not a coward.
Well, your position is very demanding. It doesn't offer a lot of,
Yeah, that's the implication of the position. Truth is true, and we're obligated to believe truth, accept the truth, acknowledge the truth, and adhere to the truth. And if you don't, you will suffer the consequences. Yeah.
Oh.
And that is the case whether you like it or not.
My bad, bro. I just came back. I've only been here for like 5 minutes. I don't know what that's about right now.
So, can you define it yet, or what?
Can I say that I think truth is, it's really perception based. You know, like if I show you a picture, and it's on a 2D page, and it's a picture of 2 ducks in a pond, and I circle the 2 ducks, and I say, how many ducks are right here? And you say there's 2 ducks, and actually there was in this picture, you can't see it, but there was a duck behind this one. So technically, there's 3 ducks in this picture. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know.
Well, that's not
to make you think things are true, and then they're really not. So what's up with that?
Well, the perception of truth and truth itself are 2 different things.
Okay, so you have a human perception of truth, right?
Right. What truth is itself.
All right. So what makes your perception of truth different than anybody else's?
I'm trying to converse with you, and you're interrupting me.
And the duck behind the,
I mean, are you listening to me? I'm trying to converse with you. Are you listening to me?
Nobody can see the duck behind the duck. bro.
You're still talking through me, so you don't actually want to converse. Evidently, I'm trying to converse with you. You're talking through me. Truth itself, the noumena, truth, is different from the phenomena, the perception of truth. The perception of truth and truth itself are not one and the same. The perception of truth is not the essence of truth. They're two different things.
All right, so your understanding of the essence of truth would be a perception of truth. So technically, there is no objective understanding of truth within humanity. Is that right?
No, again, what truth is itself is different from your perception or your understanding of what truth is.
Right, but any derivative of truth that we think we understand is coming from man.
And
So it's a human perception. It's not absolute truth.
just because the perception of truth is subjective doesn't mean truth is subjective. The
Your
truth is the thing
perception of it is the only evidence of it.
you have your categories confused again. The object being perceived by the subject. Truth is the object being perceived by the subject, the person. The perception of the object, truth, is not the same as truth itself, the object being perceived by the subject.
And how do
the
you
person.
distinguish the difference?
I just explained it.
It's
evident
can
in the
anybody
sentence that
else
you're
see
saying.
what's going on here? Am I the only one seeing this? Is this pretty? Oh man, I'm sorry. I don't want to repeat myself.
It's evident in the sentence. Truth is being perceived. Truth and perception in the sentence are two different entities.
Truth and perception. Okay, so your perception of truth, right? You have a perception of truth, right?
Correct.
All right, so
And specifically, that perception is, do you believe it or not? Or do you know it or not? Or do you like it or not? Do you prefer it or not? Do you want it or not?
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I gotta laugh, but what makes your perception of truth any different from anybody else's? Like, I don't get it.
It wouldn't. If I'm perceiving the truth, if my belief is true and everyone else's belief is true, then it is indifferent. Did you follow that?
Right, and then I go back to the example of the picture of the duck, with the duck hidden in the picture, but it was still in the frame when I took the picture. And I ask you how many ducks are in the picture, and you say two. Your perception of truth, you can't depend on it. You see what I mean?
There's a difference between the ducks, which is the object being perceived by the persons, and the perception of the persons perceiving the ducks, the object. Just because our perception is fallible doesn't mean that truth is subjective. It means that our perception is not inerrant. We can be deceived.
I think you're just really playing dodgeball. My point is, human perception is not absolute truth. That's it, bro.
So that is beside the point. The question was, what is truth itself? Not what is our perception of truth.
And a human has no way to perceive that. Any definition you provide of what is truth, I don't.
You see how you had to interrupt my sentence?
You're
you
human.
you have to interrupt my sentence, though. Like grown man, can you conduct a decent conversation?
I feel like
you sitting here talking to me, and you won't listen to the entirety of my sentence. Why?
Why are you getting upset?
The question, your answer to the question is besides the question. It's irrelevant. We're not talking about, are you perceiving the truth, and is it inerrant and infallible? The question is, what is truth itself, regardless of your perception? You misunderstood the question.
Yeah, so a man's implication of God, I don't have to fall back on that in this kind of argument. Because a man's perception of truth in God, I don't have to trust that, right?
If person A's perception of God is knowledge, it's a justified true belief, and the God obligates humans, including you, to know the truth and adhere to the truth, then yes, you are obligated to accept that and acknowledge that and adhere to it.
Yikes.
Yikes, yeah. Not very convenient for people who don't want the God to be real. Not very convenient for people who want to be God themselves in essence. They don't want to be in God's world. They want to be the God of their own world. Too bad. Not the case.
Well, I don't really see any good evidence for this claim. Sorry.
Well, of course you don't, because your mind is darkened. You're blinded by the adversary, and you don't want the truth.
I could say that you have been indoctrinated by these, suggested ideas of the universe.
And you have never formed an argument to expose the lack of justification of my position. You just keep giving this unjustified contempt and ridicule of my position.
Well, you claim you don't like what I said, but, it seems to have gotten you kind of like into it, I guess, right? Bro, you got to understand, bro. We're both people. You got to respect other people's opinions. You don't got to take everything as like a fiery sword at your fucking beliefs or your personality or anything like that.
Stop backpedaling. I'm sick of this cowardice. Like, don't come at me with your ridicule and contempt, and then
that's
say,
the problem.
"Oh, we're
Everybody
just
thinks
people."
I'm coming at them because I'm coming at the concepts. It's like,
no, you're double
everybody
speaking.
takes it too personal, man. It's just kind of
No,
crazy.
no. You're a double speaking, duplicitous.
Yeah, that's what he does
sophist.
to everybody, bro. He's very patronizing.
You're a double speaking, duplicitous sophist. You ridiculed me.
You're this, you're
and
that.
express contempt at me, and now you want to backpedal saying, "Oh, we're just people." And I never disrespected anyone else's. I never disrespected anyone else.
Bro.
What?
Yeah, you are disrespectful, bro. How you talk to people is very disrespectful, dude.
Oh,
the reason you have this patronizing way.
I'm being attacked.
No,
I'm the one being
maybe you're just perceiving things that way.
I'm not going to play this stupid game. So every time that
I always think they're being attacked whenever I speak on God. It's like they always take it so personally.
It's not. There's no justification for you to ridicule me for speaking with enthusiasm.
No one's ridiculing you. We're saying that you're being very patronizing.
So what is all this about then? What's the meaning?
People are asking you questions because you seem to know it all, and then when they ask you the question, you take offense to it and start saying you don't know this, and you don't know that, and then you start placing yourself above people.
Bro. Enough.
Well,
hush.
you gotta learn how to interact better, dude.
I still got a lot of respect for you, bro. Like, you're a passionate.
Yeah, I don't mind you, Gregory, but you gotta learn how to interact.
The ridicule. It's all unjustified. Enough.
You've been really respectful, man. I just wanted to say that. Like, respect to you, bro.
Thank you. The only thing I've done the entire time was address the arguments. And yes, my volume may increase. I may be irritated with the person because of some tactic that they're doing in the argument. All of that is peripheral and beside the point. It's not worthwhile and unjustified ridicule of all that. The point is, I'm getting an argument said to me. And then I get this hostility and contempt and ridicule when I give a counter argument against it in a forum. You can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen.
So what's the ultimate pathway to truth? And how do we know if we're on the right path?
Lord Yahushua and his word. Lord Yahushua and his word.
Would there be
through words? Words is how we've been lied to. This is a tool for the fucking deception.
I can't understand anything being said right now.
Is it possible there could be multiple pathways to truth?
What do you mean by that?
Like everybody has a subjective view and perception of truth, and everybody can have a different path.
Well, path A contrary to path B, and contrary to path C, and contrary to path D, etc., etc., etc. So, if contrary paths and contrary destinations are not going to go to the same destination. That's nonsense. When Lord
Yeah.
Yahushua says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except by me, given that position, which he stipulated, anyone that contradicts that is not going to the Father. It's not going to the ultimate truth, not going to utter blessedness, not going to paradise. Very simple. So to insist that no, any other way other than his way can lead to the Father is just childish denial.
So can I just say, oh gosh, you're referring to text or scripture when you say there's an ultimate truth and it's in this text. But I never hear the text. I never hear the ultimate truths within the text. People just constantly refer to it. Like, what is this ultimate truth that Abrahamic text has revealed to people that, like, what?
Pay attention to the sentence you just said. This happens very often. I'm only going to respond to what is said to me. Okay. So this is why I say this. I'm not trying to ridicule you or cut you to the heart. I want you to speak what you mean and mean what you speak. And I can only address you by what you say. So when you said what you just said the truth is in the text. And then people refer to the text to tell me the ultimate truth, but the ultimate truth is not in the text. I mean, it can't be both ways. If I say the ultimate truth is in the text, then the very opposite of that statement is false. If I refer to this text, which has the ultimate truth, then I am telling you the ultimate truth.
Give me an example.
That no one comes to the Father except by the Son. He who has the Son does not have. He who has the Son has the Father. He who doesn't have the Son does not have the Father.
I'm sorry, but that doesn't have anything to do with my day-to-day. That doesn't provide any truth in my life right now. That's just a statement having to do with these characters I've never seen or met in my life.
Well, on the contrary, if it wasn't for this God being real, then not real. If it wasn't for this God being real, knowledge would not be possible.
That's just a claim. That's not a real.
It's the fact you need to use the
Okay,
word
but that's
if
not a
in that
refutation of
statement,
the.
Gregory.
But that's not a refutation of a knowledge
So
claim.
now we're dealing with reputation. Okay, we can talk about reputation. Actually, I like this topic. Let's talk about reputation.
No, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. I didn't say reputation. I said refutation. When I say that those sentences I just said, and your response to it is those are assertions, that retort doesn't refute what I just said. Yes, they are assertions, and they are true.
Well, if they
They're
were true,
true about reality.
If they were true, you wouldn't need to put the word "if" in your statement.
No, you're missing the point.
Nope.
I just said those statements.
Mm-hmm.
If the God was not real, nothing would be real, and knowledge would not be possible. That is absolutely relevant, fundamentally, to everyone's existence.
Sure, but it's still a claim.
Those statements are about reality, fundamental facts of reality.
They're claims about reality, because if they weren't claims, you wouldn't require faith to hold them.
On the contrary, you can't know anything without faith.
Again, I kind of agree with where you're coming from on that, but just because you hold is faith certainty?
It can be.
Really?
There's a qualitative degree of faith. You can be certain or less than certain.
Then if you had certainty, why would you require faith?
No, that's the degree of your faith.
No, they're antonyms to each other.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
They're not. Why do you say that?
They really are.
Faith and certainty to me are oxymorons.
No, they're antonyms. They're opposites.
They're not antonyms. Why do you say that?
Because it's true.
Justify the assertion.
Sure. Faith is the absence of certainty. Certainty is the absence of faith. That is a factual statement.
It's not. Faith is trust, confidence. It's a sentiment.
Sure. And if I have certainty, do I need confidence or do I need trust?
That's the degree of your trust and confidence and assent.
Certainty is an absolute position. Faith is an absolute position, essentially. If I have certainty, then I don't need to require trust. because I have certainty. There is no trust required. There is no confidence required.
No, that's not. They're not antonyms. You keep putting them
Yo,
against each
faith
other as antonyms. They're
requires
not.
uncertainty. I feel like.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
It doesn't. You're
in my
stuck.
opinion,
You're stuck. You're stuck in this misconception of faith, and you're dedicated to this misconception of faith. Because if you can hold to this misconception of faith, you can ridicule those who have faith.
I have faith, but I recognize
Okay.
my faith isn't certainty.
Okay. Just because your faith is not certain doesn't mean my faith is not certain, or someone else's faith is not certain.
Cool. And if you've got that certitude, so I go along the fact that my spiritual beliefs are something I hold personally, and I can have confidence, I can have trust, I can have felicitude in that position. But what I can't do with my faith is actually demonstrate it as an absolute position, because if it was an absolute position, there would be no uncertainty.
Okay. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean it's not possible.
In that
You're
case,
confusing
then you've
things.
now you've made a burden of a claim which requires a burden of proof. That would require you to
Okay.
prove beyond doubt that your concept of God and no other concept of God is true.
No, I need to bear the burden of proof and give adequate proof. Anything can be doubted. Anything can be denied. Some people, again, me successfully proving my position is not contingent upon someone else's perception.
I kind of agree with that as well, because that's the difference between something that we hold on faith and trust, something that we have belief in. You may sort of equate that to a certain amount of just personal justification, personal knowledge. But the truth of the statement is something you can demonstrate to anybody to be true. That's why truth is so freaking difficult. That's why we revert to the concept of faith rather than certainty, because that's why
They're
it
not
says in the Bible,
antithetical.
and even the Bible talks about be humble. You don't know everything.
Certainly. But you keep putting faith and certainty as antithetical to one another. They are not. Okay.
Well,
Certainty
again,
is a
we're
quality.
both making a statement, so I
I
think
can't
it
finish my
needs.
sentences.
Sorry, go on, Gregory. I apologize.
Certainty is a qualitative thing. It's qualitative. How certain are you? How much confidence do you have? Do you have so much confidence that you have no doubt, or do you have some measure of doubt? Okay. So the quality of your faith, the degree of certainty of your faith, of your belief, is not antithetical to the faith. It's a quality of the faith or the belief.
Now you're changing the definition of certainty to have degrees. There's only such thing as 100% certainty.
Well, don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about the degree of your confidence. Complete confidence is certainty.
Yeah,
So much confidence that you have
there needs to
absolutely
be
no
a
doubt.
degree of uncertainty for faith, because that's the difference, man.
But you can have 100. You can be certain in what you have faith in. You have no doubt in what you have faith in. Faith does not necessitate uncertainty. It doesn't necessitate doubt.
Even
All right,
Jesus
let's look at it like this. Let's say you're extremely good at basketball, right? And you totally have faith that you're going to smoke somebody that has no experience in basketball. All right, there's a lot of certainty there within the faith, right?
There
But
is
then there could
certainty.
be a situation where you suck at basketball and you're going up against LeBron James. Now, in my opinion, this is faith. This is uncertainty, but you need hope that you're gonna. That's faith to me. That's my definition of faith. I never thought of it differently.
It's erroneous. You think faith necessitates uncertainty. It
No,
doesn't.
you just want me to change the definition of things today, which is funny. Okay, but we could do that.
I'm not simply demanding that you just conform to some other stipulated definition. I'm arguing objectively that the nature of faith does not necessitate uncertainty. It doesn't. Your faith could be certain or less than certain. It's very simple.
think that you want to try and force that down as a point. I don't think that you've given adequate reasoning in how the word faith has been used traditionally through time. Because, I mean, the origin of faith is pistis from the Greek, isn't it?
Through time, it's used in various senses. Now, just because the majority use it in the sense that I believe or I have confidence, but I have some degree of uncertainty, or I believe and I have confidence and trust, but I don't have justification for it, does not mean that's the only way faith is to be understood.
That's the general consensus of the word.
Well, they're
That's what
wrong.
most
If you're the
people think.
majority fallacy, hello, they're wrong.
So you're right,
That is the
everybody
case.
else is wrong, and we just have to accept your particular view, your individual view of what you... And if that's the case, that's fine. You can have whatever opinion you want.
And this
But
goes
that's a
back to the
bold
idea of the
claim.
perception of truth, too, because,
But your
what
argument
you
in defense of
think
your
is true
decision,
about the word faith is being disagreed upon. You're being outnumbered, man. A lot of people disagree. So what is the
appeal
truth?
to majority fallacy. I can give you instances where someone has faith and they don't have doubt, and they have a justification for it. A faith can be unjustified or justified. Faith can be without certainty or certain.
I agree that someone can have enough confidence
But there's
to
a
believe
scale.
that they can martyr themselves and they're going to go to heaven, and they have no doubt in their faith, Gregory. I don't deny that.
Okay, so then you concede to my position then. There's no need to resist it.
And that doesn't make their belief true.
Okay, so there we go.
So you're saying that
certain or
humans
less than
have no such
certain.
thing as... So then there's no such thing as absolute certainty then?
No, there is such a thing as certainty. A faith can be certain or less than certain. A faith can be justified or unjustified. It's very simple.
I disagree. This kind of means that nothing's certain.
No, he's got a point, because basically people can be wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you keep saying the very opposite of what I'm saying?
I now understand where you're coming from, Gregory. I'm trying to sort of just put it in really clear terms. I mean, I obviously, I mean, my thing is I enjoy studying theology. I've studied many different types, which is why I can sort of, go to some of the root stuff, hypostasis, for instance, which is, where we get the sort of concept of Christian faith, which then goes to the Greek pistis, which is that where we get, the concept of trust. We trust in the word of the Bible. We if you're a Christian, I'm not. So they don't want to make false assurances, and hypostasis is an assurance. So again, there's still that kind of that trust thing going on there, and I kind of say, yeah, people can be complete in their faith the same way as, and it's not a good example, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's the same way as you can brainwash someone to do really fucking awful things. You could brainwash someone to do really fucking good things. Doesn't mean that the root of that desire is true.
So you're hopping back and forth between faith and truth.
Well, we're trying to work out the truth of a belief system, aren't we?
There's gotta be.
You're confusing things. So there's a point about faith. The point about faith is that it can be certain or less than certain, justified or unjustified. A different point is what is truth and what is true.
But you can be totally convinced. You can have absolute conviction, and you can still be wrong. That's the point, Greg.
Yes, I know, but that's not the point. You're talking about different points simultaneously. I'm talking about what is faith, and it can be certain or less than certain, justified or unjustified. Now you're talking about a person's faith in what they have faith in. What the person has faith in could be true or false, justified or unjustified.
Well, we're just talking about personal confidence, and people can convince themselves personally of anything. I thought we were talking about the external, the external between you, me, and
skeptic. You're hopping back and forth between two different points simultaneously.
So, are we talking about a personal belief, or are we talking about something we can demonstrate to a third party?
Everything I was saying was first addressing the first point that we were disputing. about what is faith. I was contending this notion that faith is something only uncertain, and it's not true, or only unjustified. It's not true. My counter to that was faith can be certain or less than certain, a measure of doubt, or faith can be justified or unjustified. That's the first
Yeah.
point.
So is that something you can justify to yourself or to a third party?
What? I mean, you can justify it to yourself or you can do both. You can do both.
Well, I don't think you've managed to do it to a third party as yet, because both Electric and I kind of disagree with that. I mean, personally, you can believe whatever you want.
Well, why do you say that? Why do you think I haven't
Because
justified my position?
oh, sorry, I was looking up the statement I was made. Because it doesn't seem to be convincing. And I think when we talk about faith between individuals rather than, your internal confidence, those are two very different things.
Well, why are you not convinced?
Because I'm not a Christian.
Okay, so I haven't successfully justified my position just because you don't believe me? That doesn't follow. I've successfully justified my position regardless of you not believing me, being persuaded.
Well, isn't that the whole point of justification, if we're talking about to a third party, is you convincing me?
Justification and persuasion is not one and the same thing.
No, because I'm a reasonably logical person, I like to think. And if someone can put something that is logically justifiable or rational to me, and again, I think that's another problem, because I devolve, there's the tactile world that exists around me that I can interact with on a day-to-day basis, versus the spiritual world, which is something I hold on trust.
Okay, well, that's the nature of your belief system. So just because you don't believe my argument doesn't mean it's not adequately justifying my position.
Well, it doesn't mean it is adequately justifying your position either.
Well, I have justified my position regardless of you not being persuaded that I have.
So
your justification for you saying your argument in defense of the assertion I haven't justified my position fails.
It's not justified to me.
See, I gotta point out something, man. Assertion and persuasion. Okay, this has nothing to do with evidence and proof and certainty. These are all just faith-based things.
Which gets us back to certainty.
Kind of obscuring the issue.
Persuasion requires a level of uncertainty, right?
No, it's kind of obscuring the issue. He said, I have not, this is an objective assertion. He said, I have not justified my position. I said, why? Essentially, his answer is, because I don't believe you. Well, my retort to that
persuasion? Oh, man. Okay. No, it's all good. I'm sorry.
My retort to that is, well, I have successfully justified my position, regardless of you not believing my argument.
Yeah, you've convinced yourself.
It's not just me convincing myself. I've given an objective argument that justifies my position, regardless of you not believing it.
No,
the veracity of my position is not contingent upon you believing me.
Yeah, you've made an assertion.
What's the objective argument? That there's such thing as Abrahamic text? Is that the objective argument?
Well, I don't know exactly what he thinks I haven't justified. I think he thinks I haven't justified my conception of faith.
What?
No, it's not the fact that you haven't. I accept the fact that you can convince yourself of whatever you want to believe. I think that's part of human nature. What you haven't convinced me of is that there is any validity in your faith.
But I wasn't just expressing that I believe it. I gave an argument in justification of my faith. You keep confusing justification with persuasion and convincing.
Run through your argument again for your faith.
Okay, so in the Christian God. Well, that isn't what we were talking about. Actually, we were talking about faith itself. What is faith? I said faith is. I mean, that's what we were talking about. So you see what keeps happening in these discussions.
That's
keep getting
why
lost.
I'm trying
we keep talking about different points.
Yeah, that's why I was trying not to do that and didn't want to straw man you, and so asked for your argument.
So what we were talking about is what is faith. I was resisting the notion that faith is something that is uncertain and unjustified. My counter argument is that faith can be certain or less than certain, justified or unjustified, and we both gave instances of where someone has faith that is certain and justified, or uncertain and unjustified. And this happens every day in our human experience. So in
Yeah,
our everyday human experience, we know that faith can be certain and justified or uncertain and
All right.
unjustified.
So how certain are you that the sun's going to rise tomorrow? Is there any degree of uncertainty there?
No. I could be wrong, but I don't doubt.
That's
that
a
was
degree.
exactly that was
Saying
going to
that
be
is a
exactly
degree
my
of
next
uncertainty.
point, which is you can have certitude, but it doesn't make you right.
Right.
You've already made the
That's a
argument there.
different point. See, you keep jumping to, but it could be wrong. Well, yes, that's true, but that's beside the point. The point is, I am certain, and I have
Yeah.
justification for my certainty. To then jump to the point, well, it could be wrong, is a red
Certainty
herring.
requires validity, in my opinion. And
No,
you can't call something faith-based like valid, you know?
no, certainty does not require. It doesn't. No,
For me, it does.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a
again, that's
misconception of
why I brought
certainty.
sort of the first person, third person. You know, there are things I have beliefs in that I have total faith in. I don't have a problem with that, but I also accept the fact that I can't really demonstrate that to the same degree to another person. I can put forward arguments for it, and I can show my conviction. You know, but I also accept the fact that I could be wrong.
Again, certainty is a quality of your confidence. The confidence of the degree of your confidence is so high that it's certainty. You have no doubt. They're not antithetical. It's a quality of the thing. It's a quality of your mental state concerning the proposition.
Yeah, I think that's hubris, but that's just me.
Well, that would be a value judgment on what the person has certainty of. Not all certainty is hubris. Some certainty is justified.
I have
Some
faith in
certainty
So is
is
there a
humble.
better word than certain? Like, are you going to go to the word truth? Like, let's say I measure my foot. It's freaking 12 and a half inches. I wait 30 seconds. I'm like 100% certain is going to be the same size that I measured
When
the
you
first time.
when you say that sentence, you're saying you don't have any doubt. You
Yeah. So
doubt.
I'm
You do
asking,
not
like,
doubt.
you want to put a scale on the word certainty, like there is levels of, it's literally certainty and
No, that's not what I
uncertainty.
did. That's not what I did.
Okay.
I didn't say there were different. I agreed with you earlier that there aren't different degrees of certainty. Certainty is a degree
I
in the
disagree with
spectrum.
that personally, but you know,
What?
I agreed with you earlier, Electric, that certainty itself doesn't have a spectrum. It's a part of the spectrum. It's a degree on the spectrum of confidence.
yeah, it's the end point, really, isn't it? You know,
It's
I think
it's the
I'm fairly
superlative of
sure,
confidence.
I'm pretty sure,
So
I'm certain is kind of the finishing line, isn't it?
I'm sorry we got to do this right now, guys, but please bear with me. So give me a better definition of faith and don't use the word certainty because you just, okay, you understand why, right? Can you use a better word than certainty for defining faith?
I mean, earlier I just said faith is synonymous with trust or confidence or assent, and your confidence could be certain
Trust,
or less than certain,
confidence.
or justified or unjustified.
Yeah, all these things are also on a scale.
Well, we
There's-
started off with truth, and you were defining truth by having, like, knowing truth by having faith, and that's kind of how it all started.
right. All
Someone
these things
said,
are on a scale. There has to be a level of uncertainty with confidence and a level of uncertainty with even truth. I mean, I was going to use the examples you gave. You said sent. What was the other two? I'm sorry.
assent, confidence, or trust.
Yeah, there's a level of trust. There's a level of confidence. You know, certainty is like an absolute. You know, it's like a no room for error type. In my opinion, that's the definition of the word, right? Certainty.
It's the superlative of trust, confidence, assent, faith. I am certain. I'm expressing the degree of my faith, my trust, my assent, my confidence.
The degree of the faith. So faith isn't certainty, but it's the degree of faith.
Yes.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you. So then you can't say that faith is absolute. Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
I mean, what do I mean, right? Sorry if it's going to take me a minute to get my point out. Yeah, if there's a sliding scale of confidence and faith, trust, and there is not absolute certainty, then yeah, that means that it is there's no validity at the end of the day if you can't truly like factualize.
That's a red herring from you. What you're talking about. You're giving a red herring to yourself. Something being true versus the degree of your faith.
But
Those
you
are
can't
two different
factualize
points.
that you're going to score a 3-pointer, You can picture doing it. You can have faith you're going to do it. You can be certain because you practice a bazillion times. But until you shoot the shot and you get the result, there is a level of faith needed in this shot, right? There's a level of uncertainty that you're going to make it still.
No, you're confusing
But if you shoot the
categories.
shot and an owl flies, like you don't know if an owl is going to get in the way of the ball or something like that, right?
You're confusing categories. People keep doing it. You keep jumping from the point about faith and the degree thereof to the veracity of what the faith is. The two different points. You keep giving a red herring against yourself. You keep making this leap in your line of thinking. You keep going from what faith is and the degree thereof to is the faith true? That's why I keep saying a faith can be certain or less than certain and justified or unjustified.
Yeah, I think the difference for me is you believe it's true, you don't know it's true.
Yeah, I didn't miss your point there, honestly. Like, you don't gotta think I'm not understanding nothing. The point I'm making is, like, does certainty require truth? Like,
No, my point is that in the dialogue you keep leaping toward a red herring from the point accidentally.
Okay.
I'm not saying you're doing
does
that
certainty
sophistically.
require truth?
Certainty does require a certain degree of truth, yes. But if you're talking about faith, that's just your attitude. That's just saying, I find it worth additional exploration to figure out whether my faith is 100%, verified or not. If you're saying, I really don't feel like investigating any further or seeing if anything else is the case, we would tend to categorize your faith as absolute or unwavering, whether or not it's actually the case or not.
Something is either true or it's not.
And now there's a level of absolute faith. Okay. I thought this was on a scale, but now it's not. Okay.
No, absolute is the superlative on the spectrum. I'm absolutely
absolute faith.
Something is either true or it's not. Something either is or it's not. It's a dichotomy.
That's convenient, man.
It's just saying that you don't find anything else worth investigating. When I say that I have absolute faith that God exists, I really find no other, proposition worth investigating. To the contrary, I'm basically going to go with God existing probably till the day that I die.
Cool.
Now, whether or not he actually exists or not, that's something else. But for me, the faith is absolute.
Right, that's something else. Did you hear what Lemon just said? It's something else. You keep confusing the two. You keep, in your line of thinking, when I hear you talk to me, Electric, you keep hopping between the talking about what faith is to talking about is the faith true. The two different points, you keep hopping back and forth between them.
Well, to be fair, Lemon brought in the concept of a degree of truth, and I think something is either true or it is not. There is no middle ground.
No, he didn't say that. He said the degree of the attitude.
No, he said.
I mean, did you talk about degrees of truth?
I talked about the degree of my attitude, but like you say, there's a bit of a category error here because there's at least two things here. My attitude is absolute in that there is nothing else that I feel is worth investigating. I'm not interested in that currently. My attitude would be more or less absolute in that regard, yes.
Yeah.
But is it absolutely true that God existed beyond that in the second category? Is it true or false? That's absolute certainty or something like that, which is a little different. Some of these things bleed into each other, but it's the attitude versus whether or not it's true or not, which is the main two categories here.
So an attitude of absolute certainty, is this evidence of truth?
No, it's just my attitude toward the proposition. God could exist, God could not exist, but I don't feel like any proposition is worth
the proposition is worth investigating. I haven't seen anything that would push me toward investigating any further. So on that level, my faith would be more absolute.
You kind of okay. So yeah, I want to bring this home because this all actually started when Gregory. I'm sorry if I'm taking this the wrong way. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you said that you could use your faith to determine what's true or not. This is where it started, right?
I can use my faith to
Yeah, this is where it started.
determine
He was trying
yeah.
to explain truth and using faith, so it just kind of made a giant circle loop.
Like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like,
I mean,
my own experience, this is what I would say if I was you. Like, if I'm getting this right, based on things that I am truly confident in, this is what's going to, like, you know, this is what's going to be my absolute truth. Is things that I'm confident in. Even though, you know, I could be confident in throwing a baseball and, you know, Bert shits on my hand and I drop it instead or whatever.
That wasn't the initial assertion I was talking about. The only reason I started talking about faith is because one of you two, Electric or Skeptic, mentioned it, and then we started on this line of dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was. So why did we go down this road if that's not what you were saying, man?
Because I was addressing a peripheral point that was mentioned by one of you two. Now, before you two said that sentence, I said that you can't have knowledge without faith. You can't have reason without faith.
Can't have knowledge without faith.
Nah, I beg to differ on that.
I'm not ready to jump out the window and say I disagree, honestly. It's an interesting statement.
Well, faith has an element of something that is unseen. When we talk about knowledge, we tend to talk about things that are seen or verifiable by the senses. There's many different definitions going back and forth, faith, knowledge, whatever here. But when we talk about something that's knowable, we're talking about something that's palpable to the senses. But the thing is, the senses cannot sense everything. So for any theory of knowledge, epistemology, certainty to be had, we need to have the seen and the unseen elements. The unseen elements would tend to involve faith, but to have a full epistemology, you need the seen and the unseen. The seen, I guess, would be generally categorized as knowledge, and the unseen would tend to involve stuff like faith together to have a full epistemology.
Knowledge isn't only empirical. There's empirical knowledge or a posteriori knowledge and a priori knowledge. Knowledge that comes before sense experience or without sense experience.
Right. And so we're using our senses to gather data, but how do we know that our senses are reliable? There's that faith element again. We're going to have to have faith in the senses. So that's where faith helps round out and complete and give us access to knowledge. But without that initial faith, we wouldn't trust our senses. We wouldn't trust what was brought to us by our senses. And knowledge just becomes a very shaky foundation, if at all.
And that faith can be had with certainty and be justified.
It depends on the object of your faith. If God exists, I think that he does. And if he's good, I think that he is. Then I think that justifies my faith in him, his manufacturing of me, his manufacturing of senses, and other stuff.
Sorry, bro. There's got to be a distinguishable difference between doing a scientific experiment and getting a result and, you know, having faith that something happened that you can't get a scientific result.
What you're talking about, when you do the causation inquiry method, aka the scientific method as I call it, you are demonstrating faith in a number of different things. The most important to itemize is the uniformity of nature and your ability, your intellect, your rational faculties to make sense of the a posteriori data, the empirical data that you are sensing with your senses, and the reliability of language to communicate your interpretation of the results, and on and on and on. If you had faith in absolutely nothing, if you had no confidence in anything, which would include your very own thoughts, which would include your environment, which would include your senses, then you would not do anything, not even think. You would literally stand still. In fact, you wouldn't even stand. You would just collapse and not move at all.
Well, when we establish stuff based off of knowledge, we're using our senses to interact with the thing. But how much interaction is sufficient? There's that faith again. I'm going to have faith that this much interaction is enough to establish this thing as knowledge and say that this is the case. There's faith. Hell, even if I wanted to see if the sky was blue, I looked at the sky for a second and it was blue. Great. What about when I look away from it? Is it still going to be blue when I look away from it? There's that faith again. I have to have faith that this knowledge is not only sufficient, but that it's representative of the case. And even when I look away.
Are you saying faith and knowledge they go hand in hand?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, when I look away from the sky, is it still blue when I look away? I'm going to have faith that it is. Hell, if I get the price of tea in China being 20 cents, I'm going to have faith that from the time that I looked at it in a book from a year ago to now, it's still the case. Otherwise, my knowledge is no good. And I'm going to need to empirically verify it again and again.
Now, let me give you the general I feel like this is the general consensus of the word faith. When you don't have a absolute truth to something in a foreseeable future, you need to have a level of faith because there's a level of uncertainty. That I feel like that's the general consensus for the word faith. There needs to be uncertainty.
Yes, and it's wrong.
And you're saying that's not how a lot of people feel.
And it's still wrong.
But the context, you could just take all these, biblical terms away, strip all the, religious notions, and just let's get to the brass tacks. Why is there a context twist here?
Well, there wouldn't be a need for faith if there wasn't uncertainty, like you say. But what good would be gathering knowledge be if we didn't have some level of certainty? Some, faith in something being uniform and being the case. The price of tea in China being 20 cents, at least from the time that I look it up in a book to the time I look up to the time when I say it to somebody else. In that 5-minute interval, that 5-year interval, something needs to be constant and set. Otherwise, you don't really have knowledge in the first place. But how do we know that anything's constant and set? We're going to need to have faith. Did we see the thing that makes it constant and set in the first place? The God, the uniformity of nature. Did we see any of that? Not necessarily. They kind of work hand in hand in a way.
So Lemon and I and many people are already aware that the vast majority of people, for instance, in the United States and the so-called first world, are insistent on using the word faith in the English language as this derisive term to express their contempt and ridicule and critique of whatever knowledge claim, especially theism. But they're wrong. It's just an insistence on defining the term that way to justify their ridicule of people who do profess to have faith. But that's hypocritical on their part because the entirety of their human experience demonstrates that they do have faith, even certain faith, justified or unjustified, in the myriad of different things throughout the entirety of the human experience, including the very instance when they speak. They have faith, a justified certainty that when they speak, when they move their vocal folds, that it will cause sound to be hearable in the hearing of the speaker. And that it will be intelligible to the speaker.
Degree of uncertainty. So we should separate the definition of uncertainty from the definition of certainty from the definition of faith.
Well, I think that they do define it.
They're separate. They're different entities and they're related. So the certainty is a quality of the faith. My faith is certain. That's the degree of my faith, my confidence, my trust.
And then in the same breath, somebody could say, my faith is uncertain. And it would still be faith with uncertainty. So what's that?
Well, it's basically
that would just be a level of doubt in there.
It means that faith belongs on a scale. There is no absolute truth to faith. That's what it means.
Well, it's basically saying that the person does or does not find another proposition, another truth statement to investigate, another proposition worth investigating or not. I could think that, God could exist, in the garden or whatever forever until somebody like a serpent comes along and puts doubt in my ear. Then, there would be some doubts that would go from absolute certainty where I'm not really interested in investigating anything else to now it's like, okay, do I want to investigate this? Do I want to feel the articles of this faith to know it or sense it or touch it? Or do I want to duplicate the process myself in an experiment? Do I want to see if I have access to the same level of power, et cetera, et cetera? So I think when we're talking about absolute faith and certainty, we're talking about an attitude mentally, saying
Right, the
I'm
degree
going to
of
do
their attitude.
additional investigation or I'm done investigating and this is it.
Yes, the degree of their attitude. Faith, confidence, trust, their attitude. My
So
faith is
faith is
certain.
represented by attitude.
It is an attitude.
So faith is attitude. Got it. Thank you for
Yes,
that.
sir.
That's interesting, man. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Faith is an attitude. That's right.
It can be certain or less than certain. There's a measure of doubt, greater or lesser. And that faith, which is certain or less than certain, can be justified or unjustified. And true or false. What I have faith in, the proposition I have faith in, the proposition I believe could be true or false.
I
If
just
it's
feel like it's
true,
not fair. Like, it's not fair that you would call me an atheist or a non-God believer, even though I never actually truly stated this to you. You actually don't
I
know
never
my
said
true
that.
position. I know
I
it's
never said
fine,
that.
but you can assume, right? Any surface level person might assume this, right? You want to use biblical definitions to define my position. You would have to remove faith from my construct. And I think that I have tons of confidence and certainty. So, because
Well,
I'm
it's
not
not.
Christian, automatically do I not have faith? Like, do you see? I'm trying to build this argument into something bigger right now.
Are you countering me or countering a hypothetical person?
I'm still kind of hanging on the idea of faith and absolute truth. Kind of are, in my opinion, are opposites.
Well, again, they're two different things, and they're not antithetical to one another. The faith is the attitude. The truth is the thing being believed or disbelieved.
Well, the only way for us to have absolute access to truth with total certainty, if we can even do that, is if we made the thing. And so, unless we're the thing that made the human, the reality, the car, unless we made the thing, how can we have absolute access to any knowledge of truth then? And even then, we'd have to have faith in what we did and what we made anyway. So I don't know how you can have absolute access to truth at all unless you made the thing and or had faith in the thing that did.
Or you receive revelation from the person
So
whom.
humans have
Wait.
no.
Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Or you received a revelation from the person whom is the supreme arbiter of reality and the ultimate authority of knowledge. And the contrary thereof is both impossible and absurd.
So are we saying that there's no such thing as absolute knowledge or absolute certainty? I mean, by implication, if there's no such thing as absolute certainty, then what do we know in the first place with enough certainty to go forward and make a foundation based off of its premises?
Right. Is 1 + 1 always going to be 2? Is that
Well,
a faith thing or is that a certainty thing?
Well, Lemon, the sentence Lemon just said, when people deny the reality of absolutes, it's a self-defeating claim because that claim is absolute, and people say it with certainty. So if the statement is true, then it's false. If it's false, then it's false. It's in a double bind. It cannot be true, which demonstrates the impossibility of absolutes not being real.
And also we use, if that statement is knowable, then we can know other similar things based off of a similar approach. If we're saying that nothing is absolute, okay, well, we know that. So whichever way we came to know that, we can use to know other propositions. And then finally, we can build a foundation and a body of knowledge based off of other things that were accepted as knowable and true.
Damn. We got to start the foundation with nothing is absolute. That's really difficult.
It's really difficult. It's so difficult that it's impossible.
And the more knowledge you establish based off of that premise, the more contradictory and hypocritical your claims will be, because out of one side of your mouth, you'd be saying nothing is knowable, but establishing other knowledge,
Making all these knowledge claims.
out the other, yeah. It's kind of like what Darkness is Falling said in his Rumble videos. He said that it's kind of like we've been given a Jesuit education or learning against learning, and that nothing can be established. Everything is deconstructed, broken down, but no eternal foundation of truth is allowable, especially in some of these humanities. It's this radio studiorum, learning against learning, constantly questioning, constantly deconstructing, constantly criticizing, but never allowing anything to be established of any sort, knowledge-wise, certainty-wise, faith-wise, I guess. It's very interesting, this learning.
And then when you test that assertion by its own standard, it fails. The absolutes are not real. You cannot know anything. You test those assertions by its own standard, it fails. If it's true, then it's false. If it's false, then it's false. It's in a double bind. It cannot be true. Therefore, the antithesis thereof is the only one that can be true. So there are absolutes, and they can be known.
Yeah.
And they cannot be not known.
I'm sorry. Did that go over my head?
Did it?
It takes some time.
Yeah, it did.
It went over my head because I'm like,
it takes time for us to process this, We need to, assimilate it, rationally assent to it, and decide whether we believe it's true or false, whatever the proposition is.
And this is true about the vast majority of
catch
people.
the proposition, honestly.
This is true about the vast majority of people, because the vast majority of people not only do not think well and are not taught to think well, they're taught to think very poorly, and they don't want to think well.
Was
And
that the
someone
point I was trying to make? People don't think well? That was the point?
That wasn't the central point. I'm just making a peripheral point right now in this moment. Because you mentioned the
Who
fact
makes you a
that
better thinker than me? What do you? I think we're all equally able to perceive the same things.
well, that's not true in your own experience. People have these different perceptions. Some people think well, some people think poorly. I'm just acknowledging a truism about our human experience.
That's based on conditions and teachings. That's not based on what can happen.
I think it's the conditions that make somebody able to think one way or another. But if you're talking about thinking, we're also talking about, taking propositions to their rational conclusion, assimilating information in a consistent way to bring out some sort of whole. Some people have dedication to propositions that don't allow them to consistently think really about anything. And so at that point, thinking degenerates. If you're talking about taking a proposition to its rational conclusion and taking the implications from that premise, in an honest, open way,
Pedagogy, philosophizing is really contingent upon volition, the ability to choose. Some people ultimately don't think well because they don't want to think well. They refuse, they don't choose to think well.
I mean, nowadays, if you look at the fake news that's coming out and the Jeffrey Epstein thing, it can be pretty easy to conclude for some people that we're being ruled by satanic pedophiles. If we take those propositions to their logical conclusion. But if you're an NPC cog in the wheel, going, getting your money, doing your job, and going home, you might say to yourself in the back of your mind, you might not even admit it to yourself, that, you know, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to think any further. I'm just going to keep my head down, shut up, and just press forward. So it depends on the willingness of the thinker to go to the next logical step or stop, even turn around and turn away.
That is an instance of someone being self-consciously bigoted. But there are also people who can be unintentionally or subconsciously or not self-consciously bigoted. Some people don't think well and are not
Yeah,
aware
get
that they're
back to
not
the
thinking
subject,
well.
bro. Enough of this fucking uncertainty and faith. They're different, right? Certainty and faith are different things, right?
It's a degree of the faith. A faith, it can be on the spectrum of certainty or less than certain.
All right, so you using faith to make like truth, like claims about truth. Remember that? You were doing that, right?
Yeah, knowledge and reason is contingent upon faith, and that faith could be certain.
I'm just trying to bring back the reason for this argument, man.
I know. I'm on the point. So, what I was saying was, knowledge and reason is contingent upon faith. That faith can be certain or less than certain, justified or unjustified. If it is certain and justified, then the knowledge claims based on that faith are also true knowledge. If it is uncertain, then you're just uncertain about your faith and the knowledge that you may or may not have. And if it's unjustified, then the faith is unjustified, and the knowledge claims based on that unjustified faith base is also unjustified. It isn't truly knowledge, it's pseudoscience. That which is falsely called knowledge. With that being said, the difference between the different worldviews, the difference between the different epistemologies of these different worldviews is persons have worldview A, worldview B, with their differing epistemologies, epistemology A, epistemology B, which includes an ultimate authority of knowledge. Why do I say that? Because logically, there's only two possibilities in people's epistemology. Either their epistemology or their argument to demonstrate, to justify the knowledge claim is infinite, appealing to an infinite chain of authorities. And if that was the case, they would never end their argument. And if they never end their argument, they can't demonstrate the justification. So it's unjustifiable if their argument is infinite, if their epistemology is infinite, if their authority chain of command of knowledge is infinite, they can't justify any knowledge claims. Every time they would attempt to do so, the argument would never end. And so they would never complete the task of justifying the knowledge claim. So the only way knowledge is possible is if you have an ultimate authority. Now, when you have these different worldviews with the different ultimate authorities of knowledge, person A is going to appeal to the ultimate authority ultimately if you question them long enough. Person B will do the same. Ultimate authority A is contrary to ultimate authority B. Now, how do you discern which one is true? You do an internal critique. Is the ultimate authority consistent with all its knowledge claims? And is it consistent with human experience? Does it make human experience intelligible? Can he make sense of human experience?
And
likewise,
ultimate authority to you is Abrahamic text?
I understand what you mean. I wouldn't phrase the rhetoric that way. Yes, it is the holy writ of Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh the God. And so I defend my faith by giving a reason for the hope that is in me. That's the Apostle Peter in his second epistle or first epistle, which a peripheral side note, which is why it's very irritating for us who are of the faith to be ridiculed for being credulous. We're not credulous. Some people who call themselves Christians, worshipers of Yahweh, worshipers of Jesus, are credulous, but the ideal paragon, best example of a believer of this text is not credulous. It is a critical thinker whose faith is justified, who has knowledge. Okay. The God demands us to critically think. The Apostle Paul says in his epistle to the Ephesians, test all things and hold fast that which is good. That's not the talk of a credulous person, of a fideist, someone who just has faith but doesn't have any justification, no reason for their faith. That's not what the Bible teaches. Okay. So that's worldview A, for instance. And then worldview B, whatever other worldview that is contrary to the worldview in the Mikra, the Bible, with whatever other ultimate authority that is contrary to Yahweh, with whatever other body of data, be it text or whatever, that is contrary to the Bible, the textual recording of the propositional revelation from the God. So that's how you know the difference. The best demonstration, it can only be demonstrated case by case. So when I am talking, especially about these most fundamental philosophical issues, I do the internal critique. I try to get as much information from the disbeliever as much as possible so I understand them as thoroughly as possible. And then whatever error I detect, I will give arguments. I won't just ridicule it. I won't just express contempt against it. I will give an argument which is objective against it to refute it.
Oh, cool.
And then the debate ensues as long as
great. Great. Let's do it then. You're claiming that Abrahamic text is an absolute truth, right? That this is from the creator himself, or, whatever is being insisted is truly of the creator's suggestion.
Yes. So,
and there was no man's perception of truth in between this.
No, Scripture is not given of any private interpretation, but given by inspiration. That's the Apostle Peter.
There's been no translation by a man of this text. It's straight from God.
There is translation. There's interpretation of the message being communicated, which is true of
so then therefore there goes your scale of uncertainty right there, man.
No. Just because interpretation is involved when trying to receive the message being communicated does not mean that certainty is impossible. The degree of my faith can still be certain, and that doesn't mean that knowledge is impossible.
The ultimate authority, you're claiming that there is an ultimate authority providing truth to knowledge, but it's a man who needs to have faith in knowledge.
So everything you just said doesn't illustrate that knowledge is not possible. In my worldview, that's how knowledge is possible. It's the only way knowledge is possible.
You cannot determine biblical text to be true because it's based in faith. There's a scale of uncertainty.
How are you averting back to the same misunderstanding about faith? Just because interpretation is involved, listen to me carefully if you're going to converse with me about this. I can't just keep repeating over and over again. Just because interpretation is involved, that does not necessarily indicate that knowledge is not possible. And faith is not antithetical to knowledge. It is an attitude about the proposition.
Well, it goes back to the same thing over again, where basically it appears to be that he's saying that, truth, at least with the Bible, is unknowable. I mean, that doesn't mean that there's another knowledge that is or is not knowable, but if we know something, then let's use similar methods that we know history, that we know prophecy, to see if we know whether the text is reliable or not. That would be the metric by which we decide to have faith in it or reject it. We look at its historical claim. The Bible saying about this city, this king list, this thing. Is it credible or not? The Bible appears to have prophecy in it. If we're going to use that as, the source, okay, let's see if these prophecies have come true or not. And that would be the metric possibly by which we decide whether we accept it or reject it. The rest of its claims.
Even more fundamental than that is we're talking about what is true, what is not true, and so we're talking about knowledge. Now, in our human experience, we're talking about knowledge, which presupposes that knowledge is possible, but we have differing worldviews about what is or is not true and how we know what we know to be true. So the most fundamental question is, which worldview including the ultimate authority in epistemology of the worldview, provides the preconditions for knowledge, makes knowledge possible, the preconditions of knowledge, the preconditions of intelligibility. If knowledge is not even possible at all about anything in whatever particular worldview, then they cannot justify any knowledge claims about anything at all. So that's the fundamental difference. Because when we talk about, when we debate, when we speak, when we talk about this being true, this being false, this knowledge claim being justified, unjustified, it's all based on, it's all presupposing knowledge is possible and real. So what accounts for the possibility of knowledge and the reality of knowledge? The account thereof is the eternal personal supreme being, whom is all powerful, all going, all knowing, and immutable, the supreme arbiter of reality, creating the universe, the ultimate authority of knowledge, making knowledge possible and real, creating us in his image and likeness with our consciousness, intellect, and sentience so that we can know things empirically and rationally. And we can trust that this will be the case because of his immutability and his supremacy of character. The laws of logic grounded in his mind and is immutable, which is why debate is possible and why we can justifiably trust that debate and knowledge and all these other things concerning knowledge will be possible in the future. The ground for moral laws grounded on his character. But he is the ultimate authority of knowledge. All knowledge, all abstract is grounded in his mind, including logic. He gives us the ability to know, creating us in his image, creating us as the image bearers of him, having consciousness and intellect, endowing us with knowledge, endowing us with volition to believe, to have faith, so that we can learn more knowledge that we don't know yet. That's the preconditions of intelligibility. How do I know that to be the case? Because he has spoken to us and has had it recorded for us to know. And the impossibility and absurdity of the contrary. In summation, the proof that the Bible is true is that you can't do anything if it wasn't true. Knowledge would not be possible if it's not true.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to put this in the best words that I can. Like, so you're saying now? I'm not gonna say that. This is what you're saying, but I'll say it. Are you saying? Oh, fuck, I'm sorry. I'm saying the reception of this text is what creates the truth of it.
No, it explains what makes knowledge possible.
The reception of the truth explains what makes knowledge possible.
No, it's not the act of receiving it. The text, when your question concerns the text, as it concerns the text is explaining what makes knowledge possible.
Text is what makes knowledge possible.
Explaining what makes
You know
knowledge
about going from oral tradition to recorded history and the creation of different languages, and the idea that they were trying to establish division and confusion, and that's where they got the name Babel from. Like, have you ever heard of this, or does this just sound crazy?
The Tower of Babel in the Bible, yes. The confoundation of the languages, the curse from Yahweh for rebellion against him. I'm familiar.
Sweet. I don't have to get into that too much then. So let's just say that this is like a real prevalent issue. What makes Abrahamic text more verifiable? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, why am I trusting text? Why am I trusting text?
Well, you would have to answer that question to me. I don't know. I don't.
I don't
What are
trust
you?
text.
Where are you going?
I can extrapolate things in my reality that, these supposed texts did not tell me anything about. I don't have to base anything I do on what they say.
Okay, so you're saying I'm just trying to give it essential, trying to express the essence of what I'm thinking, getting from you. So you said you don't trust text, meaning you don't trust them to communicate knowledge, especially about philosophical issues.
I've read scripture. I like reading the Bible. I've done Bible study with groups, and I feel like I've had really amazing epiphanies while reading the Bible. Things that were very true to me that day specifically. Very relatable situations in the Bible to my real life, profound experiences that make me have adherence to the level of values that they present. Supposedly, this is the first account of these values. They say these are the true curators of human value. Or can I find these values on my own? Are they truly responsible for knowledge? Or is a man on his own going to come to these understandings? I don't
I
have
think
to
I get the
trust. I
essence
don't
of what
have to
you're.
trust the text of another man. If I am a man, I should be able to write equally profound text.
Okay, but it's so you saying that I can detect a presumption that the information originates from the mind of a man. It doesn't.
Oh,
It doesn't originate
I
from the
would
mind of a
love
man.
I would love the freaking empirical evidence that the word of God wasn't translated by a man.
Okay, you're confusing things again. The origin of the information is different from the translation of the text when it was written down. You got to stop confusing things together. Okay, so do you want to talk about
Spoke to God and wrote it down.
Okay, so first let's address the origin of the knowledge that is recorded and communicated, including translated into other languages by humans. Okay.
All right.
In principle, according to the writings of the authors, okay, according to the text that the authors wrote, this information doesn't originate from their mind. It originates from the God's mind, the God expressing his thoughts in his mind to humans, and then humans writing them down according to his instruction, so that there is an objective, publicly available reference point for every and all knowledge claims concerning what the God has said, revealed.
You realize there's something wrong with this claim, right?
What is the problem?
We're trusting that a man was talking to God.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Who?
Why is that a
What?
problem? That may be a problem in your worldview. That's not a problem in my
No,
worldview.
that's a problem in verifiable, like certainty, all these things that we've been talking about. Truth, value, and certainty. Like, you want me to trust a man's account of him talking to God?
Okay, so you see that as a problem. In the worldview of the Bible, that's not a problem. Why? Because these men were not only equipped by the God to do so. No. They were equipped by the God to do so. It's possible, with the God being involved in this, that the God makes it possible, makes it the case that the human communicates the information verbally, in action, or in writing. It's possible, and it happened.
So basically, anything a human says can be considered the word of God.
No, that's not the implication of what I just said.
How did I must have missed something, bro. I'm really not trying to be disrespectful, bro. Like, I respect you a lot, man.
Thank you.
I must have missed.
So you say it's a problem as though a human communicating this information is never adequate, that they will never do the job flawlessly. But that's not the case in the worldview of the Bible.
That's not the case in the written account of the Bible.
Yeah.
That's not just a worldview. See, that's not fair. Let's. Can we put a magnifying glass on this? There is a supposed narrative for the Christian. I hate to put this word into this right now. I don't want to inject it into the conversation so broadly, but the Christian worldview is that there is this, in fact, level of adherence of, this man wrote this down. This was definitely the word of God. Trust that. Am I so out of place to say, wait a second, who wrote this down? Who the fuck was he on drugs? Who was this? Was he a bad man? Was he a good man? Am I wrong for asking these kinds of questions? I don't think the Bible truly gives a description of these people that wrote this shit down. Honestly.
Well, they do. It does. And so in the scriptures, okay, remember, don't lose sight, because these are the things, who wrote it and what was their mental state.
We're using scripture.
Were they?
I'm sorry, bro. You're using scripture to defend scripture. And this is what my problem with these kinds of arguments.
Well, the problem is you don't understand how the argument concerning these issues work. We're talking about ultimate authorities of knowledge. So how they work is, I'm not going to appeal to something else to justify my faith in ultimate authority A, because if I do, then ultimate authority A isn't the ultimate authority. The ultimate authority authorizes itself. That's
What
the
is
nature of
ultimate authority? God, or is this like a group of men that talk to God? Like, I don't get it. What is ultimate authority?
The God and his spoken, revealed, proposition, revelation, which is recorded by the hands of men and communicated.
So check this out, bro. I'm gonna write in my phone right now, bro. God is talking to me right now. I'm gonna write in my phone right now. Everybody needs to stop smoking tobacco. All right, this is the word of God, everybody.
Okay,
like,
so
what's the difference?
The difference is that doesn't provide the preconditions of knowledge, and secondly, we can obviously see you are deliberately showing us that this is contrived and what is the word? Speculation and conjecture on your part.
It is suggested.
Listen. You're missing the point. Listen, you're missing the point. What you just did was patently speculative and conjectural. That's the nature of what you just did. You just demonstrated to us that it was speculative and conjectural, which is not analogous with the authors of the Bible.
Okay,
Furthermore,
so what was different? Like, how did God speak?
That's what I just said. That's what the difference was. You have to listen to the answer. Number one, what you just did patently in our ears was speculation and conjecture. We just saw you, we just heard you just conjecture this, just speculate this, just arbitrarily assert.
Yeah, that I'm speculating this. Okay.
But furthermore, that is not analogous with what the authors of the Bible did. Secondly, you did not provide the preconditions of knowledge.
Is that God? Who is the author of the Bible? Is that God?
Are you listening to what I'm saying to you? Every word I'm saying is relevant to your questions. If you trample on the
authority
answer,
to man. I just want you to know.
If you trample on the answer, you're not going to understand the position.
Authority and all these things you say, you just won't call these things God.
Electric. You're not listening to the answer. The second part of the answer. The second part of the answer. If you're going to converse with me, listen to what I'm saying to you. The second part of the answer is that what you just did doesn't provide the preconditions of intelligibility. It doesn't provide the preconditions of knowledge.
Why?
What do you mean, why? Look at the nature of the
Why?
assertion. What do you mean, why? Look at the nature of the assertion. You have to make the attempt in understanding this. You can't just sit here and ask the question and not make the attempt to understand the answer and make the attempt to make human experience intelligible. You can't just sit here and refuse to understand what's being said and ask questions. Okay? So when you make the attempt to understand human experience and make the attempt to understand the assertion, how does this make human experience intelligible? How does the assertion, you shall not smoke tobacco, this is what the God told me to say to you, how does that assertion provide the preconditions of knowledge?
So how did the supposed word of God in the Bible do the same thing?
Because the God of the Bible is explained, he reveals himself as the eternal, personal, supreme being. I just went through this. The eternal,
while we're
personal,
on this,
supreme being who is
my
all
bad.
knowing. I'm sorry. All knowing, all powerful, all good, immutable, to make concrete feel, and is the ground of all abstracta, including knowledge.
Okay.
And
While we're
that
on this, I just
his
want to.
word.
Thought you were done. My bad.
I'm sorry, just last sentence. And anything that contradicts his word makes knowledge impossible and makes reality absurd.
That's according to who?
While we're on this,
Jeremy, go ahead.
I don't know, Left Lane had a follow up or something. What was it?
No, it was just a thing. According to whom was the question? But I mean, yeah, we could go back and forth on that for hours. I'm interested in what you got, Jeremy.
While we're on
the guy
that, fill
brought
in the
up
blank.
the guy brought up, this is the word of God, and we know because the guy that talked to God told us what God said, right? So, I mean, I personally think Moses was on fucking drugs because what was it, the acacia plant that was on fire? I think that's like code for like he was smoking DMT. They do call it the spirit molecule. They do claim he talked to other entities while you're on it, and he could have been talking to
I would love to pick
some
you
other
back.
entity.
If you didn't have anything, did you have anything else to say to that? I'm so sorry. That's exactly what I'm getting at, bro. These people were on drugs, man. These people thought that the most profound foreseers of the future, they were the people hanging out in caves, and they were huffing weird freaking shit, like coming out of these deep caves. What was the story of... Oh my gosh, it's escaping me. I'm so sorry, guys. It's in the Bible. Someone was in a cave thinking that they were talking to somebody for like a long period of time based on something they were smelling. Am I crazy to think this? Fuck.
Even if this was the case, that doesn't demonstrate the knowledge claims of the Bible to be false. That's a genetic fallacy, regardless of how they came to know this knowledge.
No, I know, you're right. I just think it's really interesting that a lot of these people that, claim to be able to tell the future, that they were also like, they had the drugs.
Now, when you retort saying that they were on drugs, that they didn't receive this while sober and getting propositional revelation from the God, but rather they were on some hallucinogen, is that based on research? Is that substantiated?
No, but I believe they were actually talking to another entity that could have been, maybe it was God. I don't know. I just think that the DMT, the drug DMT, I think that opens you up and allows you to talk to other entities.
Now, let me tell you what I think of this, bro. So the idea of attaining authority could have came to them through using these drugs. That's what I think.
But this is prejudicial conjecture. Why do I criticize it?
Of course, I'm not. I can't claim this to be true, but we could look at certain things in history that maybe could be evident of this. Like these people were able to distinguish themselves from the group with their supposed attained knowledge after taking these psychedelics. So they start, living a little differently, walking different, talking different, wearing different colored clothes. Separating themselves from the group, making them appear more elusive and mystical and knowledgeable. And it's funny we're talking about knowledge. And these are really the people that were hiding knowledge at the end of the day. These were like curators of forbidden type truths.
What I was going to say was this is prejudicial conjecture, which is unsubstantiated, and there's no argument justifying it.
I know it's
So
just
that,
you don't have
so
to
that doesn't,
one, I guess.
and so that doesn't justify the disbelief thereof, especially when the nature of the case is that humans ought to believe this and adhere to this.
Sure, man. You're right. Don't entertain it.
I'm just saying,
So-
man, it makes sense if he was on DMT and he's talking to this other entity or whatever.
Well, it doesn't, because that's contrary to the will of this God. He commands us to be sober, not to be
It's only contrary to faith. There's just as much evidence that the guys that wrote this down, it came from God, that there is evidence that they were on drugs. So why can't we speak about them being on drugs? You want to speak about them having absolute truth?
No, there's not. There's not. It's not the nature of the case.
Bro,
there's
the
no,
assumption
not
that they were attaining absolute truth, there's a level of uncertainty.
There isn't this abundance of knowledge that they received this knowledge from hallucinogens. No, there isn't. It's not the
Bro,
case.
they distorted the truth on purpose anyway. Even if you believe that they were fully attaining absolute truth, they distorted it.
They being the authors of the Bible, you say?
Yeah, they changed the text.
Why do you say that?
Of course.
Why do you say that?
There's evidence of it. Because there's different versions of the Bible. Because there's scripture that
do you
they don't
understand
put in the
what that
Bible
means?
anymore.
Okay, do you understand what that means?
Go ahead and tell me what it means, bro.
No, tell me your understanding of what that means.
It means that you can't trust the people presenting the information.
Non sequitur.
I'm reading
that's
an
not a
article right
satisfactory
now.
content. That's not a satisfactory, contentless answer to my question. What do you mean when you say there's
Maybe for
different versions
you,
of the
okay,
Bible?
so it doesn't satisfy you. All right.
No, it's not
There's
just
a
me
level
saying
of
that I'm not
there's a level
satisfied. It is
of
objectively contentless and not satisfactory. Okay? You have all these retorts against the Bible. What substantiates the knowledge claim that they
It's
received
not
this
just
information
against
from?
the Bible. It's against faith claims.
What
listen.
what justifies this knowledge claim that they received the information they wrote down from hallucinogens and not when sober speaking propositionally to the God?
Listen, we aren't the only ones thinking this. According to Professor Benny Shannon of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, it is probable that Moses' encounter, as it is described in the Bible, with the burning bush and his dialogue with God happened while he was under the influence of an ayahuasca-like psychedelic.
And what is the justification for that assertion?
I mean, I'm sure he has something. He's with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. That sounds pretty fucking biblical.
Universities can make unjustified knowledge claims also.
This isn't just an unjustified knowledge claim. You could literally look up like where this tree was growing and if it was native to this area where they claim he was, and it's all. You can look this stuff up. I've heard of this. The acacia striatum. That's the tree that Moses was puffing.
None of you have yet to say to me. Any of you have yet to say to me the justification for this alternative origin story of the knowledge that he wrote down.
Well, the point is, Gregory, that your knowledge is based solely in faith. You have complete faith in the people that wrote these books and scriptures and all that stuff. And faith without evidence. I mean, what is your evidence for that? And it's fine that you have that. I don't ever step
I've already
on anyone's
demonstrated that.
religion.
Yeah. You have to stop being dedicated to this notion that faith is unjustified. Let it go.
Well, here's his justification. He says, inspecting various episodes in the life of Moses, one encounters striking similarities with features characteristic of altered states of consciousness induced by the Amazonian brew ayahuasca. This isn't unjustified, thinking that he was on DMT or some kind of mind-altering drug.
Let's suppose that. Let's say that he is demonstrating the supposed effects of it consuming hallucinogens. Okay, as coherent as that may be, as likely as that may seem, there is no substantiation. There's no posteriori data, no empirical data to justify that knowledge claim. Furthermore, when you undermine the origin of this knowledge, you undermine the preconditions of intelligibility. So if that's your excuse for disbelieving that the Bible is knowledge from the God rather than just knowledge from some other entity that is not the God while inebriated by a hallucinogen. What is your account of the preconditions for knowledge? What makes knowledge possible?
Truth.
The fact that we have a brain and we can know things. I don't know what you're even talking
Truth.
about.
You got to be able to verify the data.
What makes that possible?
Brain? What? I don't understand what you're even asking at this point.
Experimentation.
So you must understand this question before you start undermining a worldview that provides the preconditions for knowledge. What must be the case in order for knowledge to be possible or real?
Dude, I'm just saying it's possible that Moses was on DMT, dude. That's definitely a possibility. Or the creator of the universe decided to talk to this old guy on a mountain. Or he was on drugs. I mean, one or the other.
So until someone provides the preconditions for knowledge apart from the Bible, there is no justification for any knowledge claim at all. And when they make knowledge claims, they are presupposing this God while simultaneously denying him, which makes them culpable to him.
I don't know. What do you keep talking about knowledge claims?
That's the problem. That's
You're
the
saying we
essence of
can't
the problem.
if we don't go with the Bible, we can't know things? Well, I don't understand.
If you don't assent to the veracity of the Bible, accept, acknowledge, and adhere to the Bible, then you have a worldview that does not provide the preconditions of knowledge, which makes all your knowledge claims unjustifiable.
So you're saying
ridiculous.
the only way to adhere to knowledge is through the Bible?
That's stupid, bro. Sorry,
Yeah,
Greg,
that's
but
broken, man.
Yeah, you're
It's not
saying that the
stupid.
only way to comprehend knowledge is through. I'm sorry, that's kind of that's a
No.
stretch.
No. Very frequently, people misunderstand this argument. I'm not saying that you don't have knowledge. I'm saying that you would not have knowledge given
Bro,
your
you would think
worldview.
something with so much adherence wouldn't be
Listen, you can hear me in the middle of the sentence. I'm saying that your worldview, contrary to the worldview in the Bible, in principle implies that knowledge is not possible. Given that knowledge is possible, that demonstrates the worldview of the Bible is true and anything that contradicts it is false. And the worldviews that contradict the Bible make knowledge impossible and reality absurd.
That doesn't make any sense.
What's your critique, or what don't you understand?
You're saying outside, if you don't believe in the Bible, then you can't know anything.
No, that's not what I'm
basically,
saying.
yeah.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No. I'm saying in principle, your worldview that contradicts the Bible makes knowledge impossible. I'm not saying that you don't actively in reality have knowledge. I'm saying you would not have knowledge if your worldview contrary to the Bible was true. The worldview that is contrary to the Bible doesn't provide the preconditions of intelligibility, knowledge. It doesn't make sense of human experience.
The worldview contradictory to the Bible. Does anybody here subscribe to the worldview that contradicts the Bible?
Here.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure what that is.
I'm agnostic. I've had a falling out with Christianity, but still think it's possible that we were created.
I think the problem is, religion really likes to try to make a big distinguish difference between people that shouldn't be there.
Excuse me. What do you mean religion?
I mean practices. I mean chanting and robes and sigil magic and crosses and prayers and worshiping deities you can't see or smell or touch.
Okay, well that's not the entirety of religion. Religion is a value.
No. That is textbook definition of religion.
No, that's
when
wrong.
you're talking about scriptures and following scripture, that ends up being more along the lines of faith, right?
It's wrong. That definition, this common definition, which you have a conception of, is wrong. to
I'm in
define
definition as well.
religion.
Okay, so you want to give me the correct definition of?
So when you study some works of religious study scholars and comparative religious scholars, they first of all say that it's impossible to define, but then they make the attempt to define it. Let me post in the text chat what is said at Stanford University concerning what a religion is. Just a moment. People need to reconfigure their conceptions.
Can't I make a religion?
Yes.
All right. What would I have to put in my religion for it to be a religion?
21 minutes after the hour, this is what these religious study scholars say in defining religion.
What do I need in my religion to make it a religion?
Very simply, to not multiply words, it's a value. It's a supreme value.
Okay, so a supreme value. What is that? Like a practice, a lifestyle? Like what value? A value to your life? A value to your lifestyle?
It could be any of that and the above. Whatever you value above all else, or at least very highly, if not
Okay,
above all
so
else.
let's say that I make the suitcase religion. And the religion is every morning we have to put value into loading a suitcase with socks and underwear and t-shirts. Every morning, 7 a.m., you have to fill up a suitcase. This would be a religion then, right? All right. So so then we both have the same definition of a religion.
You say, my supreme value is the God, doing his will. Loving him, loving my neighbor as myself. Someone else has a contrary supreme value, a different religion. Now, you can detect someone's religion when they protect anything that attacks it at all costs. That which is valued above all else is someone's religion, and that's how we talk. We say when someone protects a particular belief with all their might, no matter what is said against it, no matter what, we say they are religiously devoted to that notion.
That's a different definition. That's interesting. So you're saying religion is more of how much somebody is willing to defend it? What is that? Is that like well, is there another word for that?
Devotion, dedication, fervence, ardor.
Yeah, so religion is commitment, devotion, dedication. I like that. That's true. You would have to be. It's a regimen, right?
In fact, the very Latin word, which is the etymological root of the word religion, means just that: piety, devotion.
It's a okay, so it's a practice.
It isn't necessarily a practice. It could just be a notion that you value above all else in your mind, but you may or may not do anything according to it. It could be a notion that you may or may not have a practice that adheres to it. It could be a custom that you do. It could be an item, including yourself.
I forgot why we were breaking this down. I'm sorry.
Because earlier you mentioned religion makes this unjustified dichotomy between people. And so I wanted to clarify what religion is. And so that's what a religion is. Now, some religions do that. Some religions, some worldviews with its supreme value do make unjustified dichotomies or conflicts between persons. Now, the only way to verify that value judgment that's unjustified for them to do, that's unjustified for a religious person such and such to do, you would have to have a valid epistemology for making value judgments, which is the word of the God, his law. Before we got on that tangent.
Okay, so let me try to excuse my crude language. I'm gonna do my best for you, my friend. And thanks for everything, man. You're awesome.
It's my pleasure.
What's it called? So are we saying that adherence and the willingness to fight for and protect, is this what makes a religion? Is how much we're willing to fight and protect for it? Is this the claim?
That is strongly indicative the religion itself, that strongly indicates what the religion is. The religion
So
itself is a supreme value.
we don't even try to. I'm sorry. Pretty slow right now. I have been smoking. Sorry. So we have to put this degree of. So religion's on a scale now. I'm sorry. Is that what I'm saying?
It is on a scale. It would be at the top of the axiology in the person's worldview. Axiology, what is that, Gregory? Study of value, which includes
So are we
ethics.
saying that it's a degree of truth that provides this willingness to defend and fight for a religion? Or is
No,
it
not
a
a degree of
degree
truth.
of okay.
No, just very simply, this is what it is. In just speaking English to you, a religion is a supreme value that one is utterly dedicated to, devoted to.
Right. But that degree of value doesn't have to be based in any absolute truth. It's interesting.
Hang on. It's simply a supreme value that one is dedicated to. Now, their faith in this value is certain or less than certain, and their faith is justified or unjustified. And what they have faith in may truly be what they believe it to be, or it may not truly be what they believe it to be.
Let's go back to the duck argument. Let's say that there is a picture of a duck that has two ducks in it, but for 1,000 years, a group of people have been being told it's only two ducks. Then one day, you provide an image of the same scenario, same two ducks, but now you're seeing a different angle of the camera being shot. There's a third duck in the image. Is this like a fallacy to religion? Is this you know what I'm trying to? Is this bad to try to even get at right now?
No. It's a fine, what's the word? Analogy. So in this analogy, the truth would be what the picture is. The faith would be the one's degree of the degree of confidence in their interpretation of the picture. And if the religion is involved in analogy, they would value their faith in what they believe the picture is above all else, and it would be evident by them resisting any attack against against their religion.
Right.
There
The
are,
axiom wouldn't be able to be challenged. Like a picture of a duck can be challenged. I get you.
they would never accept a refutation against it.
Right.
Against
There
their
would
perception
never
of
be yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Who
Okay,
went
so there's
back?
axioms. So what challenge? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so the picture of the two ducks that was taken 1,000 years ago, who went back in time and took a picture on a different angle of those same ducks?
Such a crude example I tried to provide for.
sorry, I had to say that. I apologize for interrupting.
Sorry.
It's all good. I'm like thinking of a lot of things right now. Freaking yeah, like I just said. Okay, so what axioms of truth do you see not able to be challenged that is only presented in the Bible, I guess, or in Mosaic law? Am I right to say that you are more like you would rather just people just stick to the Old Testament? Is that crazy to say?
No, no, that's not my position. And it's
Right.
not a matter of things not being. It's not a matter of things being impossible to challenge. It's not a matter of it being impossible to challenge this or that. It's a matter of not accepting any refutation against it. So my religion, and I will not accept any refutation that is levied against that religion. And I expressed that I won't accept any refutation against the religion that demonstrates Proposition A, I'll just say, in principle, is my religion. That's a religion.
Is that okay? Excuse my language again. Is that contrived from the Bible, or is that your own axiom for comprehension?
It's based on the scriptures.
Right. Okay, so then that's an issue for me. Something like that is like, you're basically saying that the best way to prove the Bible is to never deny it.
No, the best way to prove the Bible is to show the impossibility and absurdity of the contrary, which is what I said about 5 times now.
Okay.
Or more.
Well, I'll just try to summarize what I'm hung up on. I just believe that there is a lot of fuckery when it comes to the Bible. I can't 100% trust the text to be 100% truth. And that is why it all falls apart right there. Anytime I want to look into it, I have a preconceived notion that I'm being lied to.
So that's a trust issue. That's a heart issue.
Yeah, I wish this wasn't a trust thing. There's things that exist in this world that I don't have trust issues with, you know?
But with that being said, is your doubt justified or unjustified? Is your skepticism, your incredulity justified or unjustified? If
Whether it's
unjustified,
justified or not, I'm being as honest as I can in this topic.
no, it's not beside the point. It's the crux of the matter. It's a matter of which position is justified. That's the crux. Which position is justified? All unjustified positions are at least unjustified, at worst false. Now, if your argument against the Bible is that I don't trust it, simply because I don't trust it, then that's not an argument
No,
that
not
justifies your
because I don't
disbelief.
trust it, because there's you're a smart guy. Do I have to break down like why I don't trust it?
You've in a partial way expressed a fraction of the entirety of your argument that justifies your disbelief, but not completely. So I don't completely understand why you disbelieve.
Okay. Never truly tried to make sense of what I'm thinking right now. I appreciate you for making me think hard, man.
It's my pleasure, to the glory of God, for your benefit, mine.
My understanding of a lot of these texts that are supposedly being translated by these trusted men is my understanding that we are, finding artifacts, scrolls, scriptures, Dead Sea Scrolls, tablets, rocks with carvings on it, and, all of these supposed artifacts providing information on a time period. You could stop me if I'm wrong.
Go ahead.
All right, we're using these artifacts to, make a collection of data to provide a better timeline of this. When you want to, speculate every single artifact and who's presenting it and who's making the claim, who's saying how old this stuff is, you run into a lot of inaccurate claims. No?
I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. So, like, the amount of inaccuracies I find when I would like to go try to become more knowledgeable in this. I don't consider myself a theologian. I don't consider myself religious. I don't consider myself a Christian. I just consider myself somebody really interested in the truth. Right? I look for evidence of God. I look for evidence of all this stuff. And at the end of the day, bro, I feel like the word of God has been told by a man, for a man, in benefit of man. And that's where I'm at.
So there it is, a controlling presupposition, a controlling axiom in, what's the word? It's simultaneously your epistemology and axiology. So there's that premise, that it is only originating from the minds of men, and that the God really is not involved in the world. So, but you're not critiquing the worldview by its own standard.
You know what
So
a
your
heretic is, right?
worldview is contrary to the worldview of the Bible.
You know about
You're
mystery schools and
critiquing
heretics and mystic occultism and all that type of stuff.
all of that, so it's contrary to the worldview of the Bible. You're critiquing the worldview of the Bible and the Bible itself from your worldview. You're doing an external critique, not an internal critique. So what you perceive to be a problem for the Bible's worldview isn't a problem for the Bible's worldview. You just find it problematic in the Bible because it's contrary to your worldview.
I was going to say something different.
You see,
I guess
when
I
you
was going to
change your...
say.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. Sorry. Whatever you just said kind of threw me off, man. I'm trying. I'm my bad. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say.
I hate when that happens. May I go while you're trying to recollect that?
If there, is anybody else listening, they can say whatever they want.
When you change your worldview or consider the worldview of the scriptures, then you can see the consistency, empirical adequacy, and justification thereof. This worldview, again, I'm specifically focusing on the issue of the preconditions of knowledge because this entire conversation is about that. In the entirety of our human experience, when we talk about what's true and not true, it's about knowledge. So until the position establishes knowledge to be possible in the first place, let alone real, let alone known, then they can't justify anything that they say. They can't justify anything that they believe. They can't justify anything that they think. They can't justify anything at all. So you consider the worldview of the Bible, it provides the preconditions of knowledge. Abstracted being grounded in the God's mind, including logic, including knowledge, being the ultimate authority of knowledge. He's the supreme arbiter of reality. When he chooses to accomplish the task of revealing what he wants us to know, he not only will not fail and does not fail, but he cannot fail. He not only is supreme, he's immutably supreme. His ways are not only best, they cannot be anything other than the best. His ways, himself, his knowledge is not only the best, supreme, but it cannot be inferior to the supreme. If that God is involved in the process of revealing knowledge to us humans, and the process of humans revealing knowledge from one human to another, even through the generations, through time, then that task not only will be completed, it cannot be not completed.
Does God place his word above himself?
No, it's one of the same with him.
You're saying God is the word?
Correct.
There's no distinction without a difference when speaking about the word of God versus God himself as being an entity versus his morality, if you will.
When he speaks truth, he's speaking in accordance with his character, and he is the essence of truth. He is the entity that makes truth possible and real and knowable.
Is there any?
I've heard it before.
Is there?
I don't. Real quick, sorry. I don't know if it's necessarily in the Bible or a scripture to back it. I would assume there would be, but I've heard righteous always say that God places his word above himself. And so maybe I'll have to ask him about it. But so you disagree with that? Okay.
In the beginning of the Gospel of Yochanan, John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the God, and the Word was the God. So no, it's superior to him. It is him.
I don't know how that would make sense. Like, my words aren't necessarily me, and I'm not necessarily my words. My words come from me, and they express me in a certain degree, not in its entirety, though. It's just an expression of me, just like I used earlier, like light and illumination, or the magnet versus the magnetic field. Like, they're not one and the same. Only well, maybe they are one and the same, but only different by their attributes of expression. if that's what you're trying to say, between God and his word.
Now, you're a different entity from the God. You are not the supreme arbiter of reality. You're not the ultimate authority of knowledge. Abstracting
Right.
knowledge truth is not grounded in your being, but it is in his. You're not the essence of truth. He is. Furthermore, your Lord Yahushua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. I am the truth. I am truth itself, incarnate, and standing among you in your midst and talking to you.
I remember what I was going to say before.
Go ahead.
Story of Jesus is supposed to be curated by, was it the 12 apostles? You correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
That's right. I'm right when I say that, right?
yeah.
Fudge. Okay, so then
It isn't only known by the 12 apostles, but the apostles who wrote down the writings that they wrote down. That's the recording thereof.
so this curation by the 12 apostles. We're just I'm sorry. I feel like I
think I
don't
know
want
what
to
you're
have to. I
trying to
don't want to
say.
have to say what I'm thinking, man. Like, I'm sorry.
I think I know what you're trying to say. No,
I
the
try to
Lord does
summarize
not.
really well. Yeah.
Yeah, the Lord does not demand credulity.
Okay.
He does not demand credulity, like I explained earlier. He demands that we believe the truth. He demands that we believe the truth. He demands that we have knowledge. You read Proverbs, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. You can't get knowledge without the fear of Yahweh, you see. So he doesn't demand credulity. He demands that you have knowledge, that you have a justified true belief of the knowledge, and that you do the truth. Not only that you just have an awareness of the knowledge, but that you live life according to the knowledge of the truth.
What do you think the difference between knowledge and wisdom is, Gregory?
Depending
I
who's
think that's
talking in the context of the conversation. I mean, in essence, in general, they're synonymous, but in this conversation, you might make the distinction saying knowledge is that which is known, but wisdom is knowledge demonstrated. I'm anticipating that. That was my anticipation of what you were going to say.
Well, I would say, I mean, you can have knowledge of something that's not necessarily accurate or factual, and unwise, and have it still be knowledge, but you can't have something that's wise or that of wisdom and be inaccurate and unknowledgeable.
Well, it's not possible to know falsehood. You don't know, you don't have a justified true belief of falsehood because it's false. Now, what you claim to know may be false, but if you do have knowledge, you have a justified belief in the truth, in a true proposition.
I mean, if that were the case, then truth and facts and reality would just be cut and dry, and we wouldn't even have any room for this Discord conversation to be had. Like, the whole premise of this Discord is because it's not that evidential unless one understands logic and common sense and of various other things, but to apply it by a standard. But without that, then you know there's no
That's not the
necessary
implication of what I just said.
distinction.
That's not the implication of what I just said. I said someone who really has knowledge has a justified belief in a true proposition, a proposition that conforms, corresponds to reality. The implication thereof is not what you said. So knowledge is what it is. That's what knowledge is. And what's in dispute is what we believe we know, our beliefs about the matter. And we give our arguments to demonstrate that we know what we claim to know. And then those arguments are successfully defended or refuted.
Oh, I'm not saying this is you, but there's this claim that the axioms of knowledge were first recorded by these curators of the Bible, right? That's the claim?
No. The claim is that it does, not necessarily that it's the first recording thereof, or that these authors are the first to know these truths about the world. The claim is that it is a recording of these
And you got me
presuppositions
using the word
about the world.
axiom.
Say again?
You got me using the word axiom now.
Hello. All right now.
But what's it called? You see why I'm not over the hump with this yet? Like, if there is a side I'm trying to go to with you, like, there is something really big in front of me stopping me, man. Like, I'm looking at how there's no evidence of being able to trust man with the account of God. Like, in our
So
time
again with
today,
that,
who has the best translation of God's word today? Why is it only happening 2,000 years ago? Is there nobody with a degree of truth right now that I should be taking into account what they're saying?
so again with that, you think the translation process, you think the communication process, including translating the text from one language to another, is occurring without the God being involved, making sure the
Right.
task is completed adequately. But it is.
Yeah, and when you say that a God is involved, I'm just wondering, like, was he standing over his shoulder? Was he like whispering in his ear? It's story doesn't make it's still holes in the story.
The God doesn't have to be located anywhere to do anything. He's omnipresent and doesn't have to be in a particular location to make anything happen. Him being present or involved in the process is him expressing his divine power and enlightening the mind, regenerating the heart, which means making the mind being able to comprehend and know the information, and making the person at heart want the information and desire to do
That you
his
could
will.
say the same thing about astronomy. People at heart want to learn how to be an astronaut.
Well, it's a difference between just me saying the same thing versus me saying that this is the case. So what I'm
But
saying
the
is that it is
level
the
of
case. And that's
I mean,
devotion.
the problem with the astronaut thing is that requires a level of indoctrination, because I don't think people are naturally under the impression that we're flying through space on a globe, requiring some astronautic space stuff to go on, to be aware of that. Like, that's all just coming from a story.
the nature of the two different cases are different. And so, again, concerning the communication process, including the translation of the text, the God is involved. And not only is the God involved, when there is an error in the translation, the only way you can be aware that there is an error in the translation is when you have the truth. You can't detect an error in the translation without the truth. So the very fact that we can detect errors in the translation means that we have an adequate source text data so that we can adequately scrutinize the translation and then correct it.
So
And
how
again,
do we measure truth?
it depends on the nature of the knowledge claim.
Again, I would say
Different ways.
truth would be no different than an accurate explanation or wisdom. It doesn't change, whereas knowledge could be defaulted, based on some other unforeseen variable and stuff like that. So there's a big difference between, fact, truth, logic, all these things that would need to be necessary in order to get to. And most people get with left behind with like the material things that would be prevalent to knowledge, but they in pertaining to the physical reality versus the metaphysical, which would be consistent with wisdom. And yeah, so that's why I say they're all synonymous: truth, explanation, and wisdom.
In general, you said, how do we quantify truth, or measure it, detect it? Is the
Right.
statement coherent? Does the statement correspond to reality? Correspondence and coherency.
So
Or the other way around. Coherency and
okay,
correspondence.
because I'm kind of hung up on this point you made about willingness to defend an idea. because I feel like people fight to defend things that aren't true.
Yep, you're absolutely right. People get hung up on their own personal beliefs rather than what truth represents. And that's why, you know, we have all these discussions all the time, because people are only describing their supposed truths and what they, you know, believe in, rather than sticking to the logics and the facts, common sense, rationalism, like things that would be required to have truth. Like truth can be measured on a scale of those things.
So yeah, that does occur. Were you progressing towards something with that?
Bro. No, I was listening to what you guys said.
So again, truth, is the supposition coherent, and does it correspond to reality? In other words, is it empirically adequate?
Well, that's why I say most people relate truth with their personal beliefs and incredulities rather than the facts that maybe contradict what their personal beliefs are. So truth can be subjective in that sense, but absolute truth, you know, always has to follow, you know, this unchanging order that's always the sum of all results, you know, accurately and concisely. And then be able to articulate that into an explanation would be a way to express that truth.
Some people have fallacious conceptions of what truth is, and so they, in one of two ways, there's only one of two ways, they either think it is subjective or objective. They think truth is what they like or prefer or believe, or they understand that truth is what it is independent of the subjective state of the person. And so truth is a supposition that is coherent and or corresponds to reality. And so it is not the veracity, the truthfulness of a supposition is not dependent on a subjective person state.
I'm just wondering, when does a man's mental state go from subjective to objective?
The only way that, it's only two assertions: the fact that you have this subjective state of your person and the nature of the subjective state. For instance, the silk is soft. Number one, the fact that I feel the softness of the silk is true. That's objective. And the softness of the silk is also objectively true.
No, actually, that's not an objective truth. If you're an ant, then it might be scratchy. Now, that's based on your perspective, soft or not.
Let me ask you this: is water wet? No, just, I know it sounds funny, but just answer the line of questioning, please. Is water wet?
Of course it is.
Is water always wet?
Water is always wet.
How about in the case of ice? Do you think ice and water are different? Or do you think there's a anatomical or molecular indifference between water and ice?
Pretty sure it's arranged slightly different, right?
Well, maybe the structure between the molecules, but the molecule itself doesn't change, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Water,
that's right. So the molecules stay in the same place and just, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just kind of arrange themselves in a different structural pattern. But the point is that water is always water, whether it's steam, liquid, or a solid ice. But water isn't always wet due to the fact that ice obviously doesn't the character of a viscous liquid that could be considered a
Okay,
wet
I
like
could say
substance.
that, you know, my pillow is always soft, and then I could fill it with rocks.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like getting to the point of, you know, comparing what something is versus what something does, like, is two distinctual differences. But
it's also kind of a misnomer because if water is wet, right? Wet is a product of something interacting with water. Water is not interacting with itself. So if water's wet, would be a misnomer.
Wetness is
It's a
an effect.
characteristic of water. It's a characteristic of water and one of its attributional expressions being a liquid, but it doesn't always express itself in a liquid-like character via steam and ice. So it's always water, but it's how that water expresses itself and what state is what is going to determine its attributional characteristics, being wet for liquid.
Sure,
Yeah,
and
Matrix.
that supports the argument that there is objective perception done by man, right?
Right, and that's why I say truth, wisdom, and explanation are all one and the same thing, only different within their attributional expression. No different than water or illumination versus light or magnetism versus the magnet itself. They're just
synonymous.
Different. Yeah, they're synonymous, just the distinction without a difference.
So back to the question that Electric asked, when does the subjective become objective? Well, the subjective never becomes objective. It's just that there is objective facts about the subjective state of the person, including the fact that you have the experience and the characteristic of the experience.
Yeah, I agree. So who's to say the people that were, recording the quote unquote word of God weren't in a subjective state?
In the nature of the case, they're providing the preconditions of intelligibility, the preconditions of knowledge. I keep repeating that because it's essential to anyone's position about anything at all. When you have a position that doesn't have the preconditions of knowledge, then your position is not only unjustified, it's unjustifiable. And when the only justifiable position, the only position where knowledge is possible is the Bible's worldview, then it can't be false.
Dude, that rhetoric sounds nice, bro, but it is a little inconsistent, right? Because it makes it subjective to whatever you believe, which is what I think was going on with this conversation. You're reducing everything to what you believe, and then you keep on saying it's the Bible. And
that's not the implication of my argument at all.
All right, bro. Just please, just be concise.
I was concise. Your critique is just antithetical to what actually happened. I didn't say anything subjective about me. I'm saying an objective statement about the Bible, not about me.
I'm not saying that you're personally pointing to yourself. I'm saying that how you're saying it in whatever verbiage you're trying to use is incredibly subjective because it's all coming from you.
Okay, yes, I'm expressing what I believe and what I say I know. That's not a refutation. I mean, that's not a refutation.
I like something
You've done
you
this
said before, Gregory. You said preconditions of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm super honest with you, obviously. I've never tried to act like I knew more than you this entire time. But could we just, could we break these would be laws, right? Mm-hmm. These are things that we can confirm as verifiable evidence, data, right? That's what we would consider knowledge, right?
There's two categories of knowledge. There's a posteriori and a priori. It's true. I mean, not all knowledge is only empirical sense data.
Right. That's true. I agree.
You see, that very sentence is a priori that I just said. The fact that you agreed with that sentence and the fact that you know that you agree with that sentence,
like you said, water is wet. There is no empirical data that says water is wet, right?
No, it is empirical. It's an empirical knowledge.
Or is there a better example? I just tried to think of a quick one.
A better example is, I'm drawing a blank right now. The stupid clock in my house is annoying.
What about unicorns?
An example of a priori knowledge is that there are abstracta, very general. Or let me give a more precise example. Language is abstract. It's not concrete. You see, you don't have an empirical sense experience of that supposition.
That's not true. I mean, the definition of language is communication, and communication requires an agreement upon the words being used in the proper context and definement, which is not subjective. It's pretty well outlined, and this is what we call a convention, Greg. That's what I was trying to explain to you earlier.
You're wrong. You don't
Yeah,
understand these basic categories of ontology. Now you're going to derail this conversation that I'm having with Electric because you insist that abstracta is only subjective. And that which is real is only concrete
it is.
entities. Substantiate this.
Abstracta being something of the imagination.
No,
that
citation.
This is my understanding on it. Giving you my personal argument. I mean, if you can logically explain yourself to where you can show me where I went wrong and correct me. I mean, I'm all
I don't
ears,
like
but,
Google. I think I know
I'm
what the
all
word
ears,
abstracted means, but can you tell me your definition of the word? I don't like Google. Like, would you want to tell me
Yeah.
what abstracted means?
An abstract. It's an abstract concept which implies a inherent contradiction or duality, meaning it's only conceptually perceived in the mind of the imaginer, coming from the realm of imagination, and we can verbalize this and agree upon the confines of this abstract thing that we're going to discuss, but that doesn't reify its essence into physical properties or make it real by any means. It's just a concept that could either be agreed upon or personally subjective to one's experience, but it doesn't necessarily make it real. It's
Can you give me
just
a good
something of
what's a good example?
like a unicorn. Like we can all colloquial conceive in our imagination what a unicorn is, right? It's this magical horse with a fucking horn. And then from there, you can go on to say whatever else. But until you can validate or verify any of that based on empirical means, right? Unless you can manifest the unicorn into fruition, which we can all tangibly see and witness, it's just an abstract concept that isn't necessarily real in the sense that we can agree on the definition of what abstractly describes a unicorn being a single horn on a fucking horse-like hooved animal. So again, like that doesn't necessarily make it real just because we can colloquialize an agreeable parameter for how to, quantize this thing abstractly.
I would okay, but I would have hoped you used an example like shame or hunger. You know what I mean? I'm thinking of
those. I don't think those are necessarily not real things, but they're consubstantial, meaning that they don't exist on their own. You can't show me shame or happiness walking down the street. That's not what something is. That's what something does. So, I mean, this was all coming from our previous conversation in regards to time, and where I said time ultimately doesn't exist in that of like happiness or shame. It's a byproduct of something else, right? And conventionally, we all agree that time exists because we've all got to get to work on time or be on time for whatever basic demands life calls for. But at the end of the day, there's no one physical thing you can point to show me that's time.
We're talking about. I'm sorry. We're talking about. Oh God, what was the word that he used?
We're talking about truth. We're talking about subjective.
Specific ass word that he used.
Abstract is what the
we're talking
last...
about abstracta being turned into what was the other word he said?
There's abstract and there's concreted. This is why I'm trying to say this.
Something knowledge.
So,
you said. Did you say something?
The preconditions of knowledge.
Preconditions is abstracta being a precondition of knowledge. That's what we're talking about.
Right? Okay. So the preconditions of knowledge is both concrete and abstract. There's certain concreta that are necessary for knowledge to be real, and there's certain abstracta that need to be real for knowledge to be real. The very name knowledge, the very concept of knowledge, and anything that is knowledge, including belief, including justification, including truth.
So this is like something maybe you're gonna understand right away, hopefully. Does the action create the abstracta, or does the abstracta create the action?
No, the abstracta is eternal because it's grounded in the God's mind, which is eternal because he's eternal.
So he grants what human consciousness access to these axioms of knowledge, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the access to it kind of being filtered by the people that write the Bible, right?
You say filtered, but he reveals knowledge and we also reveal knowledge. He communicates knowledge, we also communicate knowledge.
I don't want to use the word filtered. My bad.
I mean, it wasn't necessarily bad or good. It's just that the God communicates knowledge and humans communicate knowledge.
Wait, I got to backpedal real quick. Did you say that abstracta creates
I don't
action
agree
or
with
action
that.
creates abstracta?
The abstracta is eternal, grounded in his mind.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. The abstracta is eternal. So then, wow. How do humans get access to a concept like shame?
He gave us sentience to feel that sensation and to have the intellect to be aware that we are having that sensation and understand what that is and understand what we ought to do when we do something immoral.
So do you believe there's a degree of understanding that is yet to be upon people?
There's the vast majority of all knowledge is knowledge that humans have yet to know and never will know and or never will know or even can't know.
I'm asking you all these random ass questions. I'm not trying to make it sound like what's it called? Providing different arguments. Like I'm trying to stick to the same subject, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. Now here's the article in Wikipedia.
I don't have a problem with there being truth in the Bible. I have a problem with there being
Humans involved in the communication process.
well, I used the word filter. I was trying to think of a better word. Like when you fucking bottleneck this shit, you know?
Bottleneck.
You just make it a gradual. Like you could honestly say that they didn't release everything about the Bible until around how recently was it, man? I don't think you couldn't buy a Bible in like the 1930s.
What does that have to do with the reliability of the communication process involving humans?
The axioms of knowledge that are said to be being provided by the Bible can be attained differently. It doesn't have to be through the Bible. And who's to say how many axioms were being hidden from?
Certain knowledge is only acquired by special revelation from the God.
I mean, there's way more than the 66 canon that most Christians go by and coming from Scripture. There's a lot removed from Constantine, and then you've got all the recent scriptures that were discovered. But I don't know. Some people just want to dismiss all that and stay with the KJV. Where do you draw the line, Gregory?
There's confusion here. What is the point right now?
I guess my main